Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's November 30th. The holiday season is just upon us, and Submission Radio have some gifts for you in terms of guests. We have such a packed show today, don't we, Cass?
Absolutely, guys. We've got three big guests. We've got none other than Tito Ortiz. He's making his third appearance on Submission Radio. Lots to talk to him about. We've got Joseph Benavidez. He's just had a recently impressive performance over Dustin Ortiz at UFC Austin. We want to get him on the show, play a few games with him, and then, of course, we've got Australia's own. We're gonna claim him. We've got Hector Lombard coming on the show to talk about a whole bunch of things, the Tyron Woodley situation, and of course the fact that the cage will be made legal in Australia. That's going to be another big topic, or actually Victoria, I should say. And we're going to be chatting about Conor McGregor. We're going to be taking fan questions, and we've chosen one. There's a lot to talk about, isn't there, Dennis?
Yeah, heaps to talk about, guys. As always, if you haven't yet, follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. And, of course, YouTube, if you guys get an opportunity, jump on that. Subscribe to our channel. That's youtube.com/SubmissionRadioAU. Lots of great stuff on there. We throw Cadell a farewell party before he leaves Australia, and we have a bit of a chat. Lots of stuff coming to that. And, of course, the Technique of the Week comes out every Wednesday. We go to, grappling experts all over Australia. We have a whole bunch of them with Kid Dale. We have a lot of great Sambo ones, a lot of great wrestling ones coming out. So make sure you check that out because that's a lot of fun. But Cass, I think it's time to kick off the show, and we've got our first guest waiting.
All right, guys. Our next guest is coming off a big win over Dustin Ortiz. He has previously answered to the names the Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, the Beefcake, Joby One Kenobi, and the Body. He is none other than Joseph Benavidez. Joseph Benavidez, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you?
Better now after that great introduction.
Did you like that one?
Fantastic. Yeah, we covered all places there.
That's it. We went back in time like a time machine. Great to have you back on the show. Before we get into it, we just want to say congratulations. You just got engaged. The pictures on Twitter look fantastic. Break it down for us, man. How did it all go down?
Oh man, it was amazing. Like it was a dream come true for me, and it was just my girlfriend, Megan, my fiance, now I can say. I've been throwing that word around a lot just because I can.
Yeah.
It was always something I knew I wanted to do, and it was just kind of a matter of time of, going out and doing all the things that it takes to get the engagement, finding the ring, finding this, finding the time. And for yesterday, I did it on Thanksgiving. It's been kind of like a special holiday for us that, being boyfriend and girlfriend, you still kind of spend time holidays with your family, and it's super they're super important to us, but Thanksgiving had always kind of been like our holiday, just to spend together. And this year it just kept growing, and actually this year we had both my mom and her parents there, so it was kind of everything was kind of coming together. And like I said, it was just kind of our day, and I didn't want to do anything crazy, and I just kind of wanted to just make it as original and from the heart as I could, and just, literally ask my girlfriend in front of our loved ones, and that's kind of what it did. And I kept it together pretty well, and I was excited because she told me she had no idea, and she loved the ring, and everyone that was there got to witness it, and it was nice, man. It's been a good week for me, getting the win and then getting engaged to the girl of my dreams, so I can't complain.
And Joe, the ring was in the turkey, correct?
No, I didn't put it in the turkey. It was too nice for that. I was afraid of that, so I just had it in my pocket the whole time.
And
that would have been nice.
And you mentioned the win. Did it at any point cross your mind to do a Benson Henderson and do a ask her after your big win, at UFC Austin?
Great question, because my second option was to not ask her in the ring because she's backstage doing the interviews, was to actually, she interviews me after my win. So my second option was kind of doing that, but I don't know. It's kind of obviously a personal thing, so I think that kind of would have made it, I guess, more of a spectacle, even though, we're known in the MMA world, and it would kind of, go kind of hand in hand, and that kind of does make sense. I didn't want it to be a spectacle, and, she has her job to do, and I'm done with my job. And, we always keep it pretty professional. I mean, even though, we always will, and, I think that'd be nice. But, I think I wanted to be more personal. But, yeah, my it did run through my mind to get her in the interview. You know, she's sitting there asking me questions, and I was going to be like, "Oh, let me ask you a question," and then maybe just take it, and that way everything's captured and on video, and I think it would have been a cool thing, but I think it ended up playing out perfect the way I did it. It's a little more intimate with the loved ones, and her parents came from New Jersey, mine came from New Mexico, and I wanted them to be there to kind of witness the moment as well.
Yeah, man, if you did that in the interview, that'd be crazy. The Fox guy with the camera, he would have dropped his sandwich out of his mouth when that happened. But
we might have just ruined the whole thing. We might not capture it anyway. It was a new camera guy as well, so you might have just not known what to do, and it would have just ruined everything. So,
Now, let's talk about UFC Austin. Last weekend you had an exciting and dominant fight. You beat Dustin Ortiz. How does it feel to be back on a 2-fight win streak? I was going to say, what's it been like in the world of Joseph Benavidez? But we obviously know that. How do you feel after your big win?
The win was awesome, man. It was a great fight for me. I think Dustin Ortiz made me a better fighter that night. Just by bringing obviously the skill set that he brought, but also just his toughness, and he pushed me, and nothing came easy in that fight for me. Even though I think it was a great performance, and it was pretty dominant. Nothing came easy against that guy, man. I mean, he's as tough as they come, and he made me work for everything in there, and you just learn a lot about yourself, and there's always things to take away when you go a 15-minute fight. Like, obviously, I love getting in there and knocking someone out instantly and submitting someone and making them tap with their feet, and that feels good and that feels great. But I think you really grow as a fighter when you do go to these decisions against such a tough guy. And didn't finish him, but I still made a statement and beat him worse than some of his prior opponents have. And I think pretty much showed I was kind of on another level in that realm. But yet I still was able to take some stuff away and grow from it, and it was a nice test. So, hats off to Dustin. He's a tough night out for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin really showed his heart and how tough he was. I was just wondering, what was going through your mind at some of the moments during the fight when you were landing these ridiculously amazing and powerful combinations, and he's still standing right in front of you and still going at it against you? What was going through your mind?
I was like, what's in this guy's beard? There's like titanium in his beard or something. I didn't really know what to think, but that kind of helped me out. It was like, I mean, it helped me and not like obviously I kept throwing bombs because I was like, hey, I can hit this guy and he's eventually gonna fall, and he kept not. So where I should have maybe changed the strategy up, I kind of took it like that, like I was kind of saying earlier, that's something I can learn, is one thing's not working, go to the next. My autopilot, the Beefcake's autopilot, is to throw bombs. Like, some people's is to move around, and just not get hit. Some is to shoot in, clinch in, whatever. Like, my autopilot is to throw bombs. So once I kind of started hitting him with everything, and I realized, this is how the fight's going to go, I didn't necessarily make a strategic adjustment. I started throwing bombs. So, that's one thing I can take away from it and remember, hey, you have everything. It's an MMA fight, and I felt dominant, like I thought I would in every position, on the ground, on this, on that. So, there was, that's kind of what I thought. Obviously, during the fight, which was your question, I thought, all right, I'm going to keep hitting him, and he's going to fall, because I was hitting him, I feel pretty much at will. So that was what's going through my mind in the fight. But after the fight, it was more of a learning experience. It's like, hey, you can only hit a guy so many times. On the ground, you were super dominant, so you should have done that. So there's always things I can take away. But in the heat of the moment, like I said, my autopilot is to throw as hard as I possibly can.
Yeah, and it definitely made for a really exciting fight. Dustin also landed a few big shots during the fight. Were there any times that you were seriously hurt, or at least more hurt than you let on?
No, not at all, honestly. I remember going through the fight, and I had a cut on my eye and one on the top of my head. But I specifically remembered not getting. I remember getting touched, kind of going in and him kind of throwing some stuff. But there wasn't any specific moment in the fight where I remember where I felt anything. You know what I mean? Usually be like, all right, that was a good shot. Walk through it, whatever. That was nice. There wasn't honestly a specific strike or or anything where I remember like, oh, all right, well, like he hits kind of hard or he's super strong. Like there was nothing. I didn't feel like I got hit with any real, even though you count significant strikes, whatever, just kind of landing. Like I didn't feel like I got hit with any significant strikes, and which is kind of funny because like the fight kind of played out like I thought. Like I've seen his fights before, and on the feet he doesn't necessarily hurt anyone, and no one really hurts him. Like it's kind of neutral on the feet, and the fight's kind of won on the takedowns on the ground. I think I was the first person to really get to him and put hands on him and kicks and stuff a little more. But typically his fights on the feet are typically pretty neutral. You know, he doesn't like pick anyone apart, and no matter how good the strikers, they don't really pick him apart either. So it was, I knew I was going to find him, but, you know, I wasn't too worried about that and about him kind of finding me. And, you know, I didn't feel like he really did the whole fight.
Now,
Maybe
John,
it was different though, but it didn't feel anything.
yeah. Well, you know, that's very true. But, you know, now John Dodson went on record this week and he said that he'd like to fight you. I guess the next question is, does the Beefcake want to fight John next?
Yeah, I mean, I'll fight whoever. I mean, I'll fight anyone in the division. You know, for me, I guess it does only make sense for me. Like I said, after the fight, people ask me about, you know, calling people out, this and that. And it's kind of like, it doesn't really make sense for me to call anybody out, you know, like being the number 2 ranked guy in the world. Like if I'm calling out another guy that wants to fight me, he's number 10. Like I just look like I want to fight the number 10 guy and I'm the number 2 guy. Like, why would I do that? So I kind of just let people call me out or, obviously let the matchmakers do their job. So, you know, Dodson's the guy that wants to call me out. He's right there too. In some rankings, he is ahead of me. So he actually, aside from Demetrius, probably does make sense. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to fight him. And then the thing about that fight and most of the fights is I know I'm going to end up fighting these guys at some point anyway, the division being small and me and Dodson are always going to, I feel, kind of be at the top. I mean, it's going to happen, you know, regardless. So if it wants to be next, then, you know, of course I'm down to do it. You know, I'm not afraid of any man in the division, and I'm ready to test my skills against anyone because I truly think I'm the best flyweight out there. So I'm ready to do that, or, you know, anyone else they want to throw at me. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to call anyone out, but people want to call me out, I'm ready for everyone. Like Wilson Hayes, you know, I don't even know if he's ranked, and he called me out after the fight. He's not someone I would go to and say, hey, I want to fight you, but like he said, hey, I think our fight makes sense. I said, let's do it. You know, I'm taking, in the position I'm in right now, I'm taking what I can get. So whoever wants to fight me, I'm down. Dodson included, Hayes included, the whole division basically.
Absolutely. And obviously long-term goal, you know, is holding that title belt. And I want to use Junior Dos Santos as an example of a guy who's basically, you know, beaten or beats everybody in the division, but has come up short against Cain Velasquez twice. You've already had 2 fights against Demetrius Johnson in the past. Is there any extra pressure on you to beat him again, or beat him if you guys have a trilogy?
Oh, yeah, of course, man. I mean, there's just pressure just honestly to get there and to not lose again, so I get just that chance to fight him and prove, like, I have a whole another battle before I get to him again, which is, you know, holding off the rest of the division to make sure I get that fight to prove to myself and to everybody else that, you know, I am better than I have shown in my 2 fights against the champion. You know, so that's a whole nother battle and pressure that I got to do just to get to that fight, because that is going to be, you know, that's a hard process as it is. Like it's going to be really hard for, like, look at Dos Santos. It's going to take him a lot of wins and a lot of impressive wins to fight Cain again, having lost twice. Like Favors in that situation, take him a lot of wins. Well, Brow's not the champion anymore, but if you know what I mean, like it's really hard to get that third fight when you've lost to someone twice. So you basically got to go out there and wipe everything out. So, you know, it's not something I can think of, but, you know, like I know what I have to do before I get there. Like I can't concentrate on that as much as I can just the fights in front of me and everything. But I know, you know, that's a long-term goal. You know, these little short-term goals are to get me there and prove that, you know, I can be the best, and I'm the best, most dangerous one in the division.
Absolutely. And, you know, you showed such an improvement in your striking. I mean, in your last fight, you were throwing all these crazy kicks. I'm just wondering, you know, obviously DJ, like Casper said, is the goal at the end of the rainbow. When you train, you do think about him sometimes. What do you think would be the biggest difference if you guys did have a third fight between the fight that you had, you know, last time with him in 2013?
Well, with that fight, there would be a world of difference, because that fight wasn't really a fight, I feel. I mean, it ended early, and I got caught. Granted, yes, I made a mistake, and he capitalized on it. I think there's a small percentage of times and people that like ways that could have happened, but that small percentage in the sport, like, it happened, so I didn't really get to fight. Like, I feel the fighter I am, that I was that night, that I could have been that night, and that I was, even those 2.5 minutes before. And the fighter that I am now is right there to be able to compete with him and beat him. Like, he might have beat me that night, but going on through camp and through other fights, I feel like I'm, the best fighter and the most dangerous fighter. So it's kind of like, I'm still improving, but that night, like, I knew I could be the best in the world, and just kind of got caught with a big shot before I was able to go out and prove it to myself and everybody else. So, that night, and, in practice, the person that I am, and in competition, the person that I am is, I think good enough to go in there and beat him any night. So I'm just going to only continue improving from there. So, so obviously the difference will be just me hoping not to make a mistake and him capitalize on it, because that whole fight went 25 minutes. I think it would have been an amazing battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, it'd be great to see the trilogy happen. I want to get your opinion on something, Joe. Ian McCall recently said, he had a quote, he said, "Nobody gives a shit about flyweights because Demetrius Johnson has the personality of a coffee mug." He also mentioned that he's going to start talking trash like Conor McGregor to bring more attention to the division, because that's what get you noticed. I'm just wondering, what do you think about those comments?
I think that's the stupidest thing pretty much ever, like, for him to say that he's going to do that. Like, if that's not you, then you're obviously forcing it, and you're kind of doing it, for attention. So I feel like if someone's going to talk smack, like, you should just do it, not tell people I'm going to try to talk smack, because then it's obviously not genuine. But that doesn't surprise me coming from Uncle Creepy. He's kind of like one of those guys that pretty much does everything for attention, and, if you look at his fights, I mean, for one, Demetrius is a better fighter, and that's what this comes down to. He's a better fighter. He's beat everyone in the division. And it's just like, I don't know, he says he's a dork and he has a personality, but, like, I think the last thing the division needs is a champion nicknamed Uncle Creepy that looks the way Ian McCall does. You know what I mean? Like that would be a lot worse than, a great, nice, athletic, family man of a champion like Demetrius. I think it'd be a lot worse to have a champion, I mean, even though I don't think that would ever happen, named Uncle Creepy, with a mustache and all his other antics. So, I think he's always going to kind of be that for the division is, that's the best he's going to be able to do is talk smack and be Uncle Creepy.
And, just speaking on Demetrius Johnson, I feel like he might have, he gets a bit of a rough run with media and fans. What do you think of him as champion? He's been a pretty dominant champion. What are your thoughts on him as champion?
Hey, he's a great champion. I mean, he's an amazing fighter, and, like, our first job is to be a fighter, and like I said, I think Ian McCall forgets about that, like, and some other people in the division do, like, but our first job is to be a fighter. Everything else is kind of icing on the cake. But your first job is to be the best fighter you can be. And then if you have a personality, if fans love you, if fans hate you, if you get attention, like, that's all icing on the top. You know what I mean? And Demetrius does his job, and that's kind of the person he is. He goes out there and he does his job, which is to fight. And, I think he has, another life as far as, his wife, kids, and everything. And, he concentrates on going out there and doing his job that night and living his life kind of the way that he wants to live it, outside of it, not really worrying about what the media is going to think, how much the fans are going to love him, because I think he's satisfied, and the people around him that are important are probably satisfied. And, like I said, that'd be the icing on top if, hey, he was this great, personality and more interactive with his fans and more excited in the media. It'd be the icing on top. At the end of the day, he does what everyone else wants to do, and to be champion. Like, I'm sure Ian McCall would trade in his mustache and his nickname for that world title belt. I know I would. I know Dotson would trade in his, laughing antics and his backflips to have that world title belt. So you can say, I guess what you want about him, but at the end of the day, like I just said, like, those guys would trade in their whatever so-called personalities to have the title belt.
Absolutely. And, this might be a big hypothetical, but, assuming that you do become champion, as champion of the division, what would you do to bring more sort of popularity to the flyweight division?
Dude, I mean, I'm like I just said, like anything that you do that's not you is kind of forced, and that's not genuine, whether it brings attention or it's not. Like, at the end of the day, what does it matter if that's not you anyway? Like you're faking people out to bring attention, or you're almost tricking them. Like, at the end of the day, all you can really do is be yourself. And, that's what I would do. I'd continue to do what I always do. I think I'm very interactive with my fans.
Yeah.
And, I genuinely, care about them, and I love, having any conversation. I would continue to, make awesome tweets and inspiring tweets and funny tweets and just any tweets that people can relate to, and just continue to show the people that, hey, root for me, I'm, show people they can relate to me, and therefore, get behind them, build relationships with fans and media, and like, just the stuff I already do. Like, nothing would really change, as far as, bringing the fans. And like I said, the most important part is to go out there and hang your balls out there every time you fight, every night, leave it all out there and pour your heart out in that ring. So that's something I'm going to do regardless, champion or not. I'll continue to do that and put on amazing fights and put my heart and soul out there. But, outside of the octagon, like, I would just continue to be myself, and if that's good enough, it's good enough. If it's not, it's not. That's kind of the way you got to take it, like, in this game, or that's my outlook, at least, anyway. Like, I'm not real big on selling out to be something else to get someone else. It's like, you like me or you're not. And I think that's the position, like I was saying, Demetrius takes. And at the end of the day, you just gotta be yourself. So I would hope it would add, something to the division. I think fans like me, people like me, media like me. I don't have too many haters and people saying bad things about me. So, I think it'd be nice.
And, it's funny that you mentioned your Twitter, because it's time for the tap out round. Me and Casper were talking before the interview. We actually think that you're genuinely one of the funniest guys on Twitter and have one of the best feeds. And everybody needs to follow you at Jiu-Jitsu, by the way, because there is some hidden gold, some hidden classic. There is some hidden classic gold.
I appreciate that.
Buried in that
because,
Twitter that
I
isn't
feel
acknowledged.
For a while I was like definitely like pound for pound best tweeter in the game, and all I had was Twitter. And like, I was definitely pound for pound. I won 2 Twitter bonuses with the UFC when we were doing that, and everything was great. And then ever since I got an Instagram, like, it's really hard shuffling two social media accounts. So I feel like my Twitter started to slack, and I don't know if it's a thing like worldwide, nationwide, if Twitter is like dying and becoming more like irrelevant or whatever. But like, I realized ever since I got 2 accounts, like I paid a little less attention to Twitter, and I'm just like, I can't do that. I used to just put all my awesome random thoughts and anything and this and that. So, but now I have to share, my mind with 2 social media platforms, one with quotes and tweets and one with pictures. And I feel it's slacked a little, so it means a lot for someone to still enjoy it.
Well, absolutely. We absolutely do. And speaking of Twitter, Casper's just going to read out a little poem that you wrote last week. Cass, you got it right there for the people?
Shoot.
See, we're really bringing your Twitter to light here. So this is a beauty.
So both the poems I wrote.
What's that?
They weren't ones I wrote right then. They were both ones I've wrote in the past, but I think I know what you're going for.
Okay. Well, this is by a famous poet. He goes by the name of JB. It's called Gluttony. You make me ill, yet so fulfilled. All self-control has just been killed. I force you down with joy and shame. Delight, discomfort feels the same. How dare a man call you a sin when all I feel is bliss within? With no remorse, I indulge and feast. I assume I'll quit you when I please. JB.
That's me.
That's it, right? And as any guy, who could argue with that? Everybody feels gluttony every day.
Every day, yeah. And like, the other thing is I didn't really put it as in like what I was writing about was food. And food can be an addiction to some people. And sometimes, honestly, when I'm done fighting, like, I feel that way. Like, I don't eat till I'm full. I eat till I hate myself. Like I'm not happy with myself. And I'm just like, why do I do it? And I can't stop. And at the end there, it's always kind of like a thing like, oh, I'll stop. Like, oh, I'll get a fight, or I can train and I can stop whenever. But it's a lot harder than you think. And, for that poem, like, I think a lot of people can read that, and even, if someone was suffering from any other kind of addiction, drugs, sex, whatever people are addicted to, you can kind of like see that too. And you know, you don't really know you're addicted. It's kind of like, oh, like I can quit when I please. Like you're naive to the fact that like this food or this addiction kind of like has you and is doing what it wants to. And, you know, you're like, you know, you feel ill, but like, yet you're fulfilled. You know, you don't even know the difference now from discomfort and what did I say in there? Delight and discomfort. You don't even really know. Does it feel good or does it feel bad? You just know, like, you kind of have to do it. And that's kind of me and food, like after the fights, which it's funny enough it's about food, but like I said, I feel people can kind of relate it to anything. So, yeah, I wrote that a while back, and after a fight, I was just sitting there and I had those feelings. So I get a little artistic, man. I don't know if you guys read the other one. I wrote after my very first title fight to Demetrius, and that one was called The Entertainer.
Yeah.
And that one's really deep. I think I just posted that on Instagram, but it's about 2 years old anyway. But I don't really revisit it. Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
we'll
sorry,
definitely. Do you have any secret hidden ones that you can share, or are they all buried somewhere in your Twitter and Instagram feed?
They're all buried around there. I do have secret ones that I wrote like to my girlfriend and more like love and like personal kind of ones. But,
Please share one of those ones with us, Joseph.
anything I've wanted to share thus far, I have.
Okay.
You know?
Well, you know what?
Maybe I'll make a Joetry book one day.
Well, I think that would be lovely pictures of lots of trees. Now, Joe, we knew you were coming on the show, so we had the Submission Radio marketing department abandon their families over the weekend and help us write a little piece for you. So when you're ready, I'll just read it out to you. It's called Benavidez. Are you ready?
To the poem?
The name of this piece is called Benavidez. So I'll just begin.
It's a poem, yeah.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Okay, here we go.
I'm ready.
You come on the show to chat about your fight. We understand you won with might. You'd rather Swift instead of Kim. You dominate inside the gym. So just before we let you go, we just wanted to let you know that Raging Bull is not the best. Rocky will always beat the test. That's the whole thing.
That's it. That's nice. That's amazing.
Well, you know,
So
it took 3 weeks.
It ends with a Raging Bull and Rocky debate is where we left this at.
Well, you know, I didn't want to go straight for the heart, but you've been talking about Raging Bull quite a bit on Twitter, so we thought, you know, just nudge it in there a little bit just so you can understand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, Raging Bull is my favorite movie of all time. But the thing is, like, to compare it to Rocky is just different because, you know, like I don't think Raging Bull is a boxing movie. It's more of just a character study, you know, of this violent, self-destructive kind of person, where Rocky is like a glorified, you know, boxing movie and success and underdog and everything. So Rocky is one of my favorite movies, is definitely in my top 3. I don't compare them, I guess, because I look at them as not, oh, those are the 2 best boxing movies, which one's the best? I look at it as the best films, I guess. And for me, Raging Bull is, I don't know, I love it. But Rocky, I mean, it's up there. It's in my heart. Everything about it, like, it's one of my favorite movies. I have a Rocky poster in my room. I don't have a Raging Bull poster in my room. I love both pretty much equally. But if you realize yesterday on my engagement post, where I put the picture of me asking Megan, right? I put the quote from Rocky. What I put was, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind marrying me too much. And that's what Rocky tells her at the zoo. And it was funny because I got 2,000 likes, you know, like 300 comments. And there was maybe like 3 people that were like, I see you with the Rocky quote. So trust me, man, like, I can't really say one's better. I get in tones where, you know, where I really want to, I mean, obviously Rocky was one of the best movies as well. It's not fair to say, oh, it's just a boxing movie, it's the best boxing movie, because I think it's one of the best movies ever. And in 76, I won the Academy Award over Taxi Driver, which is one of the best movies ever. So it is one of the best films. But yeah, I just like both equally. I can't really argue. I mean, I could argue if I had to. I could argue that Raging Bull's better. If I had to, I could argue that Rocky's better. You know, but I just love Robert De Niro, I think, too. But yes, it's the most special day of my life, getting engaged. Use the Rocky quote, so that has to mean something.
And just quickly, you know Joe, I mean? You know, we saw that The Departed didn't make your top 5 list of Martin Scorsese movies. What's up with that?
Oh,
we have to ask.
What didn't?
The Departed.
I don't love The Departed. I like it a lot, and I do like it a lot. For me, I am more of like a character study, like strong character, strong acting. Obviously, the movie had great acting. It was a great movie, and it was his first Academy Award, which I think he's had better movies. But for me, I'm a, like an obsessive like rewatcher. Like I like a movie. Like movies mean a lot to me when I can rewatch it and I can keep just studying the character and studying like the story. Where with The Departed, it's an amazing movie. And we watch it the first time, you're blown away. But after that, like I like to watch movies like 10 times in a week. So like once you watch The Departed, the rewatching of it is kind of gone where it doesn't rely on the twist. It's obviously a great movie all the way through, but when you know the twist and kind of what happens and how it ends, you don't necessarily need to watch it again. Like the first time it blows you away, and then you're kind of just like, oh, you know, kind of like how it's going to go down and what's going to kind of like come to the climax. Where movies without that twist, I feel like you can continue to rewatch and gain stuff from it, and that's just the kind of movies I like. But like once again, you can't argue that it's not its top 5 movies. It was his first, you know, best picture, best director nod, and the majority of the world put it in their top 5. I just wasn't one of them, like for those reasons. So, but yeah, I mean, I respect it. Obviously, the thing about those lists too, people can say like that I was doing. People can say like, oh, how is that? How'd you not put this or how'd you not put that? But it was a personal favorite list, so I couldn't tell anybody like, hey, why would you put that? Because that was their favorite. Then no one could tell me that. You know what I mean? Because everyone had their reasons, but. Just so you know, that's my reason. As you can see, I'm very passionate about movies.
All right, all is forgiven now, Joe. Now that you've explained it, all is forgiven.
The beefcake takes his personal list seriously.
You see where I'm coming from as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like if you love to rewatch movies, like you don't watch The Departed like a fourth time and enjoy it as much as you do the fourth. Whereas a movie like Raging Bull, like or another one, you keep catching the little things because it's not relying on this twist. And like maybe the 5th time you watch it, you like it more than the first time you watch it. The 3rd time you watch it, you like it more. Where The Departed, maybe it'll stand the time for people to like go back and revisit and watch it. But like if you want to watch it like a 5th time, it's not going to do much for you.
And you
but
know,
I love
Joe,
the movie. It's a great movie.
Joe, on September 7th, you made a comment on your Twitter. You said, if you're thinking about watching the Saved by the Bell movie, just shit in your hands and clap instead. It will save you 2 hours. We're just wondering, give us the name of another movie that you'd just shit in your hands and clap over instead of watching that you've seen recently.
Oh, that I've seen recently. Well, that's the thing. I'm kind of a movie snob, so I tend not to go watch and visit terrible movies. That one just happened to be a night at the house, and it was more like I knew it was just going to be a ridiculous just debacle of a movie. You know, that's why I watch it. Like, I go into it knowing what like, it was like not awesomely good by any means, because there was nothing awesome about it, but you knew it was just going to be ridiculous debacle. You know what I mean? So, but that was definitely one of them. Other than that, I don't really know, man. Like I said, I'm kind of a movie snob, so movies that people might think are like gonna be super awesome, I would rather shit in my hands and clap. Like all my roommates and everyone wants to go, oh, let's go watch Dumb and Dumber 2. My response, I'm like, I'd rather shit in my hands and clap. Like that's gonna be awful. Like the first one's cool. Or like any new crazy thing coming out. Like I'm not like a big guy on watching like a Dracula remake or a Hercules or a crazy action like Ninja Turtles. Had no desire to see that one, even though, you know, they call us the Ninja Turtles and Dwayne Ludwig's obsessed with them and we're all ninjas and Ninja Turtles, and something I grew up on. Like just stuff like that, like kind of like blockbuster kind of stuff like that. I'm just like not into. So most people might be into them, but like I said, I'm kind of like a movie snob. So there's a lot of movies that most people might like that. Yeah, I'd rather shit in my hands and clap than watch.
Dennis is that guy. Out of our team, Dennis is that guy. He's the movie snob, so I totally understand where you're coming from.
That's awesome.
Before we let you go,
like disrespecting movies for what they are, but it's tough.
Before we let you go, because I feel like we're chewing up your whole day, we are going to let you go in a second, but we got to play one more game with you, Joe, and that's Would You Rather. We played this last time. You seem pretty into it, God. So we figured we'll get you some more examples, all right? So first one, right? Ariana Grande or Adriana Lima?
Adriana Lima by far. Ariana Grande is no-go for me.
Really?
Like, by far, Adriana Lima, yeah. She looks like she's 12, and she's just weird, and know if she's talented, but talent is attractive to me. Even though Adriana Lima's not attractive, she's not known for being talented. She's known for being hot. So Adriana Lima.
See, I was gonna say Ariana Grande, but the 12-year-old remark makes me feel really weird now. So
Right? Yeah.
I've got a thing against Adriana as well. I think I'm on the same boat as you, Joe. I just don't like her either. Now we've got the battle of the strange here. We've got Lord or Tori Spelling. Which one do you choose?
I love bizarre individuals, so this is right up my alley. Even though I don't think either of them are hot, I like weird shit. But I think probably Lord, just because once again, like I like her artistically. I guess like she's an artist, and like looks aside, this and that, like there's something attractive about just having a talent. I guess.
Yeah.
And, like she's obviously pretty talented.
I'd probably go Lord as well, just because she may well be Randy Marsh from South Park, and he's pretty funny, so go Lord. Here's a question for you. We've got Lois from Family Guy or Leela from Futurama.
Wait. Oh, Lois all day.
Yeah?
Lois is a goddess.
But
Love
how many
her.
times are you
If
going
I
to get a
was a
chance to be
cartoon.
with a chick with one eye?
You can always cover the eye. You can poke it out. So, I mean, there's more chances than you think around here.
Oh, God,
Blindfold them and they can have no eyes. You know what I mean?
You're blowing our mind right now, Joseph. You're just blowing our mind.
Yeah.
Let's finish this off with the last one. This is the most difficult one. Ben Affleck or Matt Damon? Which one do you think? I'll start this one off by saying I like Matt Damon more, so I'd go with Matt Damon.
I'm going to go Matt Damon as well.
I'm gonna be the odd one. I'm gonna go Ben Affleck. I have this thing. I like Ben Affleck's movies more than Matt Damon's, and I loved Runner, so I'm just gonna go Ben Affleck.
Yeah. You know what's weird is I almost feel Affleck is better respected for like his directing and writing now. Like you can always remember movies he's directed and wrote as being amazing, but like you don't have like there's not a role as him as an actor like really stands out. But his movies that he's directed, produced, and wrote or whatever have stood out. Good Will Hunting, Argo. It's kind of weird. So like even though people think of him as an actor, he's more of like like the creator, which is pretty crazy. But like I love Matt Damon. I think he's awesome.
Absolutely.
So Matt Damon.
Joe, we're gonna let you go. We really, really appreciate you giving us your time, and it's always a pleasure.
I love you guys. We're glad to be on. I'd love to any other time, man.
We'll definitely do it in the future. We'll definitely chat to you probably before your next fight or afterwards. Guys, don't forget, you can follow Joseph Benavidez and check out pictures of his dog Benny on Twitter at JoeJitsu. And what's your Instagram? Where can everyone find you on Instagram?
Everyone's getting the same, Joe Jitsu on Instagram.
Awesome. Yep. All right. Well, again, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Follow my fiance at Megan O'Leary and my dog at Benny O'Leary as well.
That's
the whole
hilarious. Oh my God. Well, check out all their Instagrams. Check out Megan's, Joe's, and of course, Benny the dog's. And I will definitely speak to you soon.
You guys rule, man. Thanks.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the reason mixed martial arts is banned in New York, Tommy Toehold. And you're listening to Submission Radio. Let's do this shit!
Our next guest is coming off a win at Bellator 131. He is one of the most decorated light heavyweights of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, Tito Ortiz is back on Submission Radio. Tito, welcome to the show.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's always a pleasure when you come on. Now, Tito, we're about 2 weeks removed from Bellator 131, where you beat Stephan Bonnar. What's been happening in the world of Tito Ortiz, and how's the body feeling after the fight?
Well, body's feeling fine. Just besides, I had a little eye trauma during the fight. I guess got hit with a punch or two, a couple jabs, and got a detached retina, and I had to go into eye surgery and reattach my retina. And so the last, 6-7 days now, I've just been laying in bed, letting my eye heal. The surgery went 100%, no problem at all. The doctor says I'll be seeing fine about another 2 more weeks. So a little scary, but, I guess I'm the $1 million man. It's just getting fixed one thing after another, and everything's brand new on me now, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You said a couple more weeks. Is that like the healing time frame, or what exactly is that?
Yeah, it's the healing. It's 3 weeks before I could see 100%. I'm about 20% better already. The last week I've been pretty much laying on my stomach the whole time.
Wow.
It's kind of hard because I can't really lay on my back. I can't pretty much lay on my side or lay on my stomach. I've been embedded, and it's hard with twins, of course. It's great that I have my girlfriend Amber that helps me out with my boys, and but she's taking care of me also. So for once, it's just kind of incapacitated where I can't really do much. I'm just kind of waiting for my eye to heal, and after that, just get back in the gym.
And we certainly wish you a very speedy recovery. Now, getting back to the Stephan Bonnar fight, it was a very personal feud between the two of you. And after all that transpired between you guys, how did it feel to finally get your hands on him and beat him?
It felt really, really good. I just want to make sure I don't do that again, just because I watched the fight and I was so sloppy. I just had too much anger, I think, coming in. I just was pushing my punches. I think the rest of my fights, I just need to calm myself down and just really do everything I do in training. And I think the fight in general just came my heart. I just fought strictly with my heart. Technique was thrown out the window, and I was trying to kill him each and every round, and all my punches were pushed. I was just rushing everything, and I watched the fight, and I was disappointed in my in the fight in general. I thought I could fight a lot better, and I thought maybe I should put a little more time into it. I fought good enough to win, but at the same time, I thought I could fight a lot better, for sure.
Well, obviously, this one was a very personal feud between Bonnar and yourself. Obviously, he said some things earlier on about your family, and I was going to ask, between the entrance and fighting Bonnar after the things he said, how hard was it all keeping those emotions in check?
It was really, really difficult. I think after the first takedown and he got up so quick, I was like, wow, this guy's heavy. He's heavier than normal. Usually old guys put it down pretty easy. I guess his camp did the right thing, was preparing him for the fight. His trainers were my ex-trainers, so I guess they prepared him the right way. But he still couldn't stop me. I put the right damage down and got my hand raised to victory. I said a split decision. I watched the fight 3 or 4 times. I don't believe that. But that's the judges. You can't leave them judges' hands. But I went there and fought as best I possibly could, and I got my hand raised.
Yeah, that was a very weird split decision. Nobody really knew where that came from. So you were pretty confused when you heard it was a split decision, just like the audience, weren't you?
Big time. I was just like, huh, excuse me? I don't know. I was like, I thought I'd take down every round. He hit me with a couple of punches, but most of the punches were off my arms that I was blocking, and a lot of my punches are connected solid to him. The damage on his face, the blood on his face, the cuts on his face. I thought I showed more damage, but, judges have their own opinions, and that fight they have it.
Yeah, that was a really strange one. I was going to say, Tito, in your fight against Alexander Schlemko, obviously no judges needed, but you had a very quick finish, and some would say that it's hard to shake off ring rust that quickly. How did you feel going in 3 rounds, and did you feel like, you've gotten back into the groove of things now that you've gone 3 full rounds?
I think that's what it was. I think I needed to shake those 3 full rounds of pushing myself, just to make my heart feel what it feels like to go, hard as it possibly can. Getting that rust off me was really, really important, I think. And I think just for get my next camp in running, I'd possibly be fighting for the world title my next fight. And that's what I'm just excited about, getting that rust off me. It really does make a big, big difference. The Schlemko fight, I think, was just more nerves, It finishes so quick, it's already over that quick. They're like, wow, okay. But I trained so hard for a fight, and I didn't even get that fight. The rust didn't get shook off. But this fight against Bonnar, I really was able to shake off all the rust, and now I can just get back into camp and and for that world title.
And before we speak about your next fight, the other big story coming out of the night are the ratings. They were huge, massive. People were very, very impressed with them. What went through your mind when you saw how much of a success the event really was?
I did a lot of work. I did a lot of PR. I did PR for the whole 2 months. Every single radio possibly I could across the United States, Canada, even in Australia I did a lot. I did a lot of PR. Mexico, across the world I did as much PR as I possibly could to promote this fight. This is what I do best, is promote. I know how cool. I've been doing it for such a long time. I get an opportunity to try to sell the fight. Bonnar did his part of selling the fight and talking about me, giving me, some ammo to fire back on him. We did ESPN, we did all sport networks, pretty much here to Canada and Mexico, we killed it. I was on the phone all the time. I was traveling. I was doing the things needed for the fight, and it turned out the viewership's on spike.
Tito, I was going to say the other part of the ratings question is you guys went up ahead against UFC 180, which is arguably one of the bigger cards the UFC has had in a really long time and one of the most hyped fights between Mark Hunt and Fabricio Verdum. Did you expect to do that well competing against the UFC and also a World Series of Fighting in the same weekend?
Well, it all comes down to name recognition. And, Spike TV has a huge fan base. When they had, my name on there, Bonnar's name on there, the other guys who fought on the card, Schindling, Manoff, everybody else that fight on the card, is just amazing that we could do those numbers against the UFC, against the World Series of Fighting, but name recognition is what it comes down to. I've been in this game for 17 and a half years. People see fighting, they see my name on the front. They don't want to watch me get beat, or they don't want to beat somebody. And that's what they tune into. I mean, they got to see a great fight all the way down the whole card of Bellator. Scott Coker did an amazing job with the card in general. So I guess the ratings really proved. But, of course, pay-per-view, you can't really go head-to-head with somebody who has a free fight on the same night. What do we want to watch? Do I want to watch something free, or do I want to pay $65 in pay-per-view for? And if it's not an exciting fight, they're going to watch it free. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we had Uriah Faber on last week, and he mentioned how he asked to be fighting on the prelims as opposed to the pay-per-view, because of all the cheapskates, obviously, they rather watch the free fight. So it's just amazing, how much that works, and obviously the PR that you guys did helped as well. Now, in terms of what's next for Tito Ortiz, who would you like to fight next, and is it likely that we'll see you versus Rampage Jackson?
Against Rampage, I would love to fight against Rampage, but it's just in Rampage's hands right now. And I know Bellator's working on that fight to make it happen, but until they're making work on that and make it happen, I want the world title. I'm the winner against Noon and McGregor. That's his name, last name is, I believe it is. I believe they're fighting in February, so I would like the winner against them.
That would absolutely be an exciting matchup to see fight the champ. With Rampage, he recently tweeted that, the UFC, about sticking with the devil that From what you know about the situation, do you think it's likely that Rampage will stick around in Bellator, or do you think he might be going back to the UFC?
I don't have 100. I know he has a pretty ironclad contract with Bellator, so I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. So I think he's just going to have to work it out and stay with Bellator.
Okay. Now you say that in terms of the Rampage fight, in terms of him, I'm just curious, what's the process like? Like, have you said to Scott, look, I want this fight, and they said, okay, we'll speak to Rampage, or have you spoken to Rampage and said, listen, let's do the fight, or anything like that?
It's between Rampage's management and Scott Coker, I believe. I really have no say so. I mean, I can say Rampage, let's fight. But his management doesn't let him do it. I mean, I guess that's the problem when you have a management company. You got to kind of do what they say.
Absolutely. Now, at the Bellator 131 post-fight presser, King Mo called you out. However, on the show last week, he was on our show. He mentioned that he doesn't believe you'd want to fight him. Is King Mo somebody that you'd be interested in fighting next?
Well, I mean, right now it's all about my career. I have 2 more fights left in my contract. And I think King Mo is just stepping down on my career of fighting somebody. I want to fight someone who have an opportunity to prep for a world title. Why would I fight somebody like King Mo? I mean, there's no reason to it. It just doesn't make any sense. I have an opportunity to fight someone like Rampage Jackson who beat King Mo. Why would I waste my 2 fights on somebody who it doesn't make any sense? It's a lose-lose situation. I beat him, I'm supposed to beat him. I lose to him, look, I lost to King Mo. I mean, that's a dumb fight. The guy is a nonsense fighter. He's a journeyman. It doesn't really matter.
Fair enough. I was going to say the other thing about, if let's say you did fight King Mo, obviously you've got 2 fights in your contract. One could be, say, Emmanuel Newton. The other one maybe Rampage Jackson. If for whatever reason one of those fights fell out, I guess the upside of fighting Mo is that, it'd be another fight like Stephan Bonnar where he'd promote it and obviously you'd promote it. I'm just curious, what would have to happen for King Mo to earn a fight against you?
Fight at a light heavyweight that he could really beat. The last 2 fights were guys who, I don't even know their names. When the last guy he fought on the same card as me, he was a 185 pounder, who wasn't even ranked at 185 pounds. I mean, I don't want to talk trash on King Mo. You know, King Mo was a good fighter at his time. And, you know, right now with him just saying the things he says about me during the press conference, I was just like scratching my head. I'm like, how far back have we gone back in history now? I mean, this guy is just talking so ghetto and just so trashy. I mean, he just talks like a street hood rat. I mean, this guy it just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, and I kind of understood after I looked at the paycheck he got of $10,000 for fighting. Then it made me understand why. You know, and for him to get paid is to fight someone like me. And I've worked too hard in my career. You know, let him beat somebody great, and then he can come in and fight me. But until then, I want to win a world title. I want to become a world champion. I want to fight someone that's going to, you know, make me great. I want to fight somebody that's going to be okay.
Absolutely. And, you know, speaking of that world championship fight, if things go to plan and you do get it, when do you see yourself going back and fighting again next year? When would be a time frame that you'd think, you know, okay, this would be a good time frame for me to get back in the ring and fight again?
You know, I would like to see probably April, May, see February, March. You know, April sounds like a good time. So I would like to give the champion time to train for the fight. You know, I know they're fighting in February, so, you know, April, May, that sounds great for me. I mean, that'll give me time. Like I say, enjoy Thanksgiving coming up here and Christmas, and then just start training, you know, and get to the grindstone. I'm going to take myself back up to Big Bear again. You know, I haven't done that in, 4 fights, so if I get an opportunity to fight for the world title, you know, I'm going to put a good 6 months solid camp in and, you know, get my hand raised, get that world title. I'm going to make one solid run at that world title and, you know, get the gold around my waist one more time.
So, Tito, did you say 6 months of training camp?
Yes, 6 months.
Wow.
And this is not solid. This is not solid push, kill myself training. This is train every day, do everything I possibly can to get my body in shape as much as possible. I looked at my last fight, and I wasn't in as great shape I could have been. You know, of course, there was little small injuries, and I'm not putting in no excuses. So, yeah, no, it's a 6 month camp. I mean, it's not going 6 months straight through super hard camp. You know, I use the 3 months to prepare my body so I'm perfect. So I get 2 months of solid, hard training up in Big Bear. I'm taking myself back up to Big Bear again. I haven't done this in, you know, almost 4 fights now. I'm going to make the sacrifice. You know, I'm taking my boys up to the camp with me. I'm getting away, and I really want to push myself as hard as I possibly can. If I'm making a world title shot, I'm going to come in to win the world title. I'm not coming in and say, okay, well, I gave it a try. No, I'm coming in, I'm going to win the world title. You know, against Bonnar, I kind of had a little injury the last month of it, and I sucked it up and I fought. And I'm not using no excuse because, you know, Bonnar was the best he could. I was the best I could at the time. I would have fought him with one arm if I had to. I had no choice. I talked smack about my family. I was going in there and damage his face. I did my job. I got my hand raised. Cool. Now I had to do the surgery. Now it's time for me to recover from that, get right back in camp after this, get back in the gym, start training, get my body right so I can go 5-minute rounds at 100% as hard as I possibly can and win and get my hand raised. Because that's what it's going to take to be the champ. That's I know in my mind. That's going to be the champ that you got to do. And that's what I'm going to put my mind, put my body through so I know I'm perfect. You know, I look at the weigh-ins and, yeah, I was shredded, I was cut, but, you know, just my size difference, everything, I did enough to win the fight. I don't want to do enough just to win a fight. I want to do enough to win a world title, and that's something I have to do by April or May.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, Tito, it seems like a lot of fighters these days are talking about training smart versus training hard. And I've heard a lot of guys say, oh, in my last fight, I overtrained and things like that. It just got me thinking when you said training camp for 6 months, and obviously not all of it's going to be a full camp, so to speak. I remember on The Ultimate Fighter, you were saying how about overtraining and it's just a myth and things like that. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in general on overtraining and if there is such a thing.
Yes, there is such a thing, 100%. I'm leaving the fight in the gym. You know, if you're going hard for 3 months, 6 days a week, you're going to leave in the gym. You're going to flatten out. You're going to, when it comes to fight time, you're going to get too much, and your body's going to be too burnt out. A lot of it comes down to supplements, as in vitamins. You know, I eat a lot of vitamins every single day. I mean, a handful. I mean, it's like 15 different vitamins I'll eat every single day, and that keeps my immune system up, my body regenerating fast, and I'm able to push myself through those times. There's also times where I got to take days off, whether it be that say, I need to take the day off. I'm too tired. My mind is just too broken down. My body's broken down. I need to take a day off. Taking a day off actually helps. It helps your body a whole bunch. It regenerates everything in your mind, regenerates everything in your body, and you're able to go better the next day. But like I say, it's 5 to 6 month training. It's just making sure I get at least one training session a day for the first, month or two. A lot of different type of lifting, a lot of heavier lifting for muscles to kind of build muscle. And then the next month will be kind of lighter weights where I kind of put endurance into the muscles. And the last 2 months is a lot of, sparring, the hard stuff. The last 2 weeks is kind of tapering off a lot of things, not doing sparring, mostly focus mitts. And you kind of got to feel the right range of things to do. Having the right trainers and that push you the right way, because there is trainers that will push you until you're dead beat, dead tired, and you think that's the way to get better. And some people it is, and some people it isn't. I guess it's their age, their weight, and how their minds are.
Absolutely. And speaking of training, somebody that's been under scrutiny lately has been Mike Dolce over his training methods and weight cutting methods. You recently mentioned that you disagreed with some of his ways of cutting weight. We're just curious, what are some of the methods that you use to cut weight, and how do they differ from some of the ways that you heard about Mike Dolce's methods?
Well, strictly in my opinion on Mike Dolce, I think it's everything he does is a fad, and that's strictly my opinion. I've been cutting weight since my sophomore year in high school, and what you put in your body is what you weigh, and of course it's how your body's going to burn. All these guys are just putting in protein and for energy. Well, your body doesn't burn on protein for energy. It's called carbohydrates, complex carbs. Things you do stay away from is white bread, white rice, white pasta. Everything should be wheat. And whatever you put in is what you're going to gain, because we're burning so many calories. This type of diet is not for a person who's an average person. It's not a weight cut for an average person. We're burning, 3,500 calories a day. You got to intake 3,500 calories just to keep a weight on. This is strictly talking to myself. And I watch a lot of the wrestlers do it. And during the weight cut, I've watched some of the guys that have worked with Dolce, and by one meaning BJ Penn, during the time that he cut his weight. And when he lost to Frankie Edgar, he was weighing 149 pounds the week of the fight. It was like 149 pounds a week of the fight. What? You got to at least be 10 pounds a week before the fight of the weight, not 4 pounds. He goes, yeah, I know. It's just I didn't understand. Had him eating berries, had him eating nuts. That's fine and dandy if you're a track runner or a distance runner or something like that. You want to put in carbohydrates in your body so you're able to have energy to, really push yourself during the rounds. Well, there's a conversation I had strictly with DJ too, of him telling me that, the day of the fight he felt flat, he didn't eat. Dolce had the UFC Expo, and he was trying to get back to beat BJ. He get back in time, and he was feeding BJ like salads, and this after the weigh-ins. After a weigh-in, I'm eating carbohydrates. I'm eating pancakes. I'm eating bread. I'm eating as much as I possibly can to burn my body. And yes, you can eat too much, get too overweight, and be slower. But if you get your weight up to normal, where it's to get the 10, 15 pound range, that's fine. That's great. Pedialyte is one of the big things. I want to drink, and everybody ever seen me weigh in. The first thing I do as soon as I get off the scale, I'll turn and face the guy. I'm reaching for the Pedialyte because I got to feed my body. My body wants something to drink right then. And that's what's really important, is people trying to keep their weight down and make that weight cut easier for them during the end. As in a wrestling attitude, we cut 15 pounds. 15 pounds, that's a 2-day cut. There's no problem. It's a 2-day cut, sacrifice. As soon as the weight comes off, as soon as you make that weight, put that weight back on as fast as possible. And that's the most important. I've been doing it, like I said, for 17 and a half years. And the only weight cut I've ever had problems with was when I fought who was it? Was Nogueira, and that was probably the worst cut I ever had. Of course, I came in really heavy. I came in about 239. I did, what was it, 28 pounds in 3 days.
Jeez.
I thought I was going to die. And that was the worst weight cut I've ever done. I'll never do that again. But I wasn't prepared for that fight. And I mean, plain and simple, that's all it was. But the weight cuts, it really comes down as what you eat, is what you weigh. You know, of course, if you're not going out eating cheeseburgers and Taco Bell and fast food and like that, no. You treat your body like a machine. You got to be like a machine if you want it to train like a machine. Everything got to be super clean. I mean, as far as brown rice, chicken, fish, steak should only be, up to the week before. The week of is a little harder to break down steak during the weight cut. After the weight cut happens, steak is great for your body because it's high in protein. And yeah, it'll take a good 8-9 hours to digest, but if your body's used to doing it, it won't have a problem doing it. As I do, I do the Texas de Brazil after my weigh-ins where, I eat a good pound of steak. I eat a pound of red meat, and my body just feeds off of it. But everybody is different. Everybody is completely different. But I don't know. I guess you got to look at a lot of wrestlers, how they cut weight compared to, and I heard people have a little talk back of me saying that the bodybuilder cut weight is what Dolce does. And Dolce says, why I've had 20 fights and this and that. Okay, that's fine. But when I hear someone who's a former world champion and questioning the weight cut and saying how bad his fight was because he had no energy, and it showed in this fight he had no energy due to BJ Penn, I question that. And someone like BJ is a close friend of mine. I don't want to see his career be over because someone made a mistake of not feeding him the right things. And all of a sudden he's making millions off of the fans in general of saying the Dolce diet's the way to do it. And this is my opinion, strictly my opinion. I ain't sitting to straighten out facts. I'm saying about what I've heard and what I've seen, and that's the way I think of it. And if you're going to cut weight the right way. I mean, I guess the right way is do it yourself.
I'm glad you explained that, because obviously Dennis and myself are not fighters and we're not wrestlers. I think the closest we've come to cutting weight is missing a lunch. So I'm glad you explained that to us. Now, Tito, you're obviously a UFC Hall of Famer. You're a legend and an icon in the sport. Do you still feel like you have anything left to prove in the sport, or is there some kind of goal that you feel like you haven't yet attained?
No, I have nothing to prove. I have, I have my own things in my own mind and my own life, the goals I have to prove for myself, but to nobody else, no, not at all. I want to be a world champion again, and that's my goal. My goal right now is to become a world champion in Bellator. That is strictly my goal. I have nothing to prove to anybody at all. I've done everything underneath the sun in mixed martial arts, and I'm still doing it. And I'm having fun now. This is fun to me. I'm happy. It's nice to be happy. I'm happy in my relationship. I'm happy at home. I'm happy in the gym. I'm happy when it's my weight cut. And that's usually strange because it's really a really horrible weight cut. But This last one was an easy weight cut. And, it's fun to get in the cage and fight. The walkouts are amazing. Getting respected by a company like Bellator and Spike TV and Viacom, I think that's what makes me happy. Of course, my relationship, but I think the biggest thing is you have a company that respects you. Us fighters, we're a dime a dozen. I really think that it all comes down to is at the end of the day is all we have is our family and our fans, and we want to be respected by them. And when a company talks bad about us or disrespects us, says we're not good enough, and says, that we don't belong in the sport or something like that, that's when the disrespect happens where it's not fun anymore. You don't want to do it. It's like you don't wake up to go, all right, cool, I'm going to the gym today because I'm going to fight in 3 weeks or 3 months. But when you're at a place where they respect you and, they say good job and, this guy's one of the best and, he gave it all he could out there, win, lose, or draw, he still give it his all. That's when you love it. And at the end of the day, when it's all about the fans and your family, when they say, that guy was one of the best ever, that's when it makes it all worth it. And I think right now I'm at a place in my mind and my body and my soul that I'm happy. I'm having fun. And it's fun to get in the gym and train. my body's reacting. My body's reacting to the timing. My timing's still there. Everything's is almost perfect. I'm trying to kind of sketch back because usually when things go this good, you're kind of waiting for something to go back.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe my eye surgery is the thing that went bad, and knowing that we have the technology nowadays that you can fill after something like this and it'll be 100%. Knowing that, maybe it is perfect. Maybe it's just what I've been waiting for. You got to live in hell to live in heaven. And over the last 7 years, I trained in hell, lived in hell. And this last year has been pretty damn fun and exciting, and worth all my hard work. That's for sure.
Absolutely, well said, Tito. Now, speaking of your fans, we've got a couple of fan questions for you. They've sent them in, and we've chosen the best ones. So we'll ask you a couple. We've got one here from @Napalm Nathan. He'd like to know who would be your dream matchup in the MMA world out of any fighter, both retired or active. If you could have a dream matchup, who would you choose?
Dream matchup. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of this guy. I mean, through my whole career, I actually got to meet him once, and from Japan, and it was Sakuraba.
Yeah.
Kushi Sakuraba. I've always wanted to compete against him just because he was so big in Japan. I mean, he was like the Michael Jordan of Japan. When I went there, I couldn't believe how huge he was in Japan. And I'd always like get an opportunity to compete against him just because our wrestling styles matched a lot because of the wrestling. I thought my ground and pound would probably kill him, but it was just one of those names that I know that I could beat. But I thought that he was the best at the time, and he knew how to sell a fight. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolute legend. Now, Derek MMA wanted to know, Tito, you managed Chris Cyborg for a period of time. Do you believe her and Ronda will ever fight? And also, who would you predict wins and how?
Well, I'm still very close friends with Chris. Chris was at my last fight. I seen her after the last fight, and trying to get her down to 135 is almost impossible. As I said a long time ago, that they would try, and it's going to be very hard for her to do it. And she's tried, and it's almost impossible for her to do it. If Ronda made a catch weight, I know Ronda doesn't want to do it because she doesn't want to lose. This is strictly my opinion. I think that's the only way that fight's ever going to happen is if it's at a catch weight, because Chris is not going to make 135. She's never made 135. She's always made 145, and that's been her weight her whole career. I mean, that's like me trying to get down to 185. I mean, I would never make that happen. No possible way. I could never do that. So I think that's the only way that ever happened. And the time will tell. Let's see if Ronda gets pushed into pressure so much she has to fight Chris that happens. But I think that's the only way that it will happen. I mean, she wanted to fight Gina Carano at 145. So what's the difference fighting Chris Cyborg at 145?
Interesting point.
Very well said, Tito. Now, we're going to be doing a quick thing called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We throw a whole bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready, Tito?
Of course.
Okay, here we go. How does Tito celebrate Christmas?
I dress up as Santa Claus and give gifts to my boys so they'll realize it's really me. I think it's Santa.
Nice.
And I did it last year. For my whole family, all my friends, they were at the gym and everything. They came and dressed as Santa Claus. It was cool. I'm doing it this year, too.
Do you get the beard out as well, the white beard?
Everything. No, everything, dude. I put a big pillow in my stomach, the voice, the whole deal, man. I do it. It's pretty cool.
I think this needs to get on Vine at some point, Tito. Just saying. We know you're a huge MMA icon, but are you still a fan of watching MMA? And if so, who do you like to watch, Tito?
Who I like to watch fight now? God, there's so many guys. Guys in UFC, they just got lost. There's so many guys. You can't really tell who. Nick Hine is one of the guys, I'd say. God, I know whenever they can find a girl to fight Chris, when Chris fights, because she terrorizes girls in the cage. God, who else? That's pretty much it, man. I mean, I like to say, I watch Nick Hine. He's a tough guy from Germany.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Absolutely, Tito. Now tell us, Punishment, it's one of the, best clothing lines in MMA, and guys, jump on punishment.com to get all your latest stuff. But what has been your favorite piece of clothing that you've created through Punishment?
My favorite clothing, gosh, it'd have to be my shorts, the flame shorts.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to master those things, as in design-wise, stitch-wise, so they don't rip, so they don't tear. They last a long time. I'd have to say the shorts because, they quick dry. You go swimming in them, or you can go work out in them, sweat completely, and they'll be dry within, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I have to use shorts.
Man, I love quick dry shorts. I was going to say, Tito, EA Sports UFC announced the other day that they will be releasing UFC Legends as downloadable content this December. Now, I know it's a long shot, but as somebody who's disappointed not to see you and Rampage in the game, is there any chance that one of those legends might be yourself?
I don't know. They don't put me in the game. I mean, they do a lot of things with my name without it. They try to erase me from the history of UFC. I don't know. Is this sport really called UFC or is it called MMA? I know I'm a legend. I don't have to be in a game to be put in a game to be called a legend. And my fans know who I am. Everybody else knows who I am. I've done my spot in this world as an MMA fighter. If they put me in a game that's called Legends, that's their fault and that's their bad. I mean, I guess they'll lose some people buying that video game.
Jeez. And, you've competed in the ADCC in 2000. We're just wondering, are there any plans for you to compete in another grappling tournament such as Metamoris, possibly in the future?
I've thought about that. I've actually been going online, looking over some stuff, and, maybe putting on my own. Put on one of my own submission tournaments. Maybe Tito Ortiz Invitational 3. I've already done 2 of them before a long time ago. I might do another one. You never know. Maybe we'll do one this summer, and I'll compete in it, and use it for the public too, so they can compete in it. Maybe I'll compete against the public. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. That sounds fun.
I like the sound of the Tito Ortiz Invitational. Tito, one of the last questions here we've got is, what's your favorite feud that you've been involved in thus far in your career?
Has to be me and Ken Shamrock. I mean, that was the realest, the best, the most truth, and you didn't have to sell. You didn't have to sell us. We knew what to say. We knew how we hated each other. We knew what we did, but it's kind of funny because, I guess life is true because at the end of the day, we ended up becoming friends. He was at my last fight, and he was cheering me on. He gave me a hug after the fight. I said, "Good job on kicking that guy's ass," and
wow.
It was amazing, man. It's kind of like I don't know, Ollie Foreman. It was just crazy. That was one of the guys who I disliked the most, but he brought the best out of me. He made me train the hardest because I didn't want to lose to him. It was no one had to sell it. It wasn't a company trying to push somebody for me to fight. It was strictly hatred towards each other. And at the end of the day, we are human, and we became, friends. It's kind of funny.
Well, there you guys go. Tito Ortiz. You can catch him on Twitter at Tito Ortiz, and make sure to go on punishment.com and get the latest clothing from Punishment. Some great stuff. Me and Casper were looking through the website before, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there for Christmas that we know we'll be getting for our family going into the Australian warm Christmas because we need a lot of shorts up here. Tito, thank you so much for coming on the program, and we hope you have a speedy recovery with the eye. We look forward to speaking with you next year and looking forward to seeing who you match up with next.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. And, of course, all my fans out in Australia, I appreciate you guys' support. I've been out there once through the Worldwide MMA, and it was a great experience, great people, very, very nice, and hope that I'll be coming back soon for some more seminars. But once again, 2015, I will be world champion. I appreciate all you guys' support.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin. Don't get submitted. Listen to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is fighting on January 3rd against Josh Berkman, originally from Cuba. He is one of the biggest names in Australian MMA. Ladies and gentlemen, our very own Hector Lombard is back on Submission Radio. Hector, welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate.
Hector, it's great to have you back on. Now, we haven't seen you in the octagon since you defeated Jake Shields at UFC 171 back in March. You originally got a fight in UFC Fight Night 48 in Macau. What have you been up to and what's new in the world of Hector Lombard?
Well, unfortunately, I couldn't fight up there in China, but for some reason, I recover really well. I don't know what happened, like the injury, how it happened, but I believe that I was in training a little bit after my car accident, and just after that, couldn't get to go to China, but I'm looking forward to my next fight in January 3rd.
Absolutely, Hector. Now, speaking of that fight on January 3rd, you will be fighting Josh Berkman. Now, Josh is a UFC veteran. However, he's been fighting in smaller leagues recently, namely the World Series of Fighting. Were you surprised that you got matched up with him, seeing as you just beat two Strikeforce champions and he recently just lost?
Yeah, I mean, he says, don't believe what I say. What the people say is that he lost because he just wanted to get into the UFC, and if he would keep winning, he would never have the opportunity to fight for the UFC again. But I mean, this is another former champion that I'm gonna beat, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know only beat two former Strikeforce champions. It's gonna be the second World Series of Fighting champion that I beat, because the first one was Potter Harris, and he's gonna be the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Josh Berkman, stiff test. What are you training specifically for Josh, and what areas do you feel he is dangerous in?
I mean, I'm a complete fighter. I just shot my skills in every area, because I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I'm a black belt in judo. The only thing that I have to shot myself is in the cutting my way and get ready for. But I think that I'm the best at all in the 170 division at every area. Not only better than him, I'm better than everyone out there. That's my opinion.
Absolutely, Hector. Just to double check, the injuries that you had before, your body's feeling good going into this one. Everything's healed up finally, and training's going well for you.
Yeah, I think that I won't have any problem with my body for this one. But I don't really, to be honest, I don't really gonna worry about him that much. I mean, as long as that I made my weight right, and I'll be able to beat him easy. And that's what's been one of my issues in the past. Like I'm too overconfident sometimes, and that kind of like lead me to some a little bit not bad performance, but not the best performance.
Okay, that's interesting. Is there anything specifically that you've been working on in terms of overconfidence or anything like that?
Well, I'm not gonna be overconfident anymore. I mean, it happened to me, a couple fights down the past, but I'm not gonna be overconfident for this one. That's for sure. And it's another former champion that I'm facing, and I can't just be gonna be fighting somebody who's gonna be easy to beat. He's got a lot of fights. He's got almost 40 fights, and he be a lot of big names up there, John Fish, and then But I mean, overall, I definitely see myself winning this fight with no problems at all.
Now, we were over in Sydney for UFC Sydney, almost a month back now, and everybody was a little bit disappointed when they found out that you weren't going to fight Tyron Woodley on the card. For the Aussie fans listening at home, tell us, how close did the fight actually come to actually happening, and why didn't it happen? Because we know that you wanted to fight Tyron on that card.
Well, I mean, it didn't depend on me. I mean, I was pretty excited to be fighting in Australia again. But UFC couldn't get me an opponent, and they tried the best. They reached out to a lot of people, and as you know, they should sign Josh just to fight me, because there's no many in the division that want to fight me. I never see that before, but it's the first time that happened. But I was disappointed. I was disappointed in not be fighting in Australia, but what can I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're a kind of guy with your style. Not too many guys are very eager to fight you. Tyron has said that he didn't want to fight you because you guys both coming from American Top Team. But you mentioned to us last time that you don't really train together. I'm just curious, what sort of relationship do you have with Tyron? Are you guys close at all in the gym?
I mean, I would tell you this much. I had no relationship with him at all. I mean, we never talk, and we see each other when he comes for his training camp. He doesn't train with us. He trains Mississippi, wherever he lives at, and he comes to American Top Team, and I use the facility. But I mean, I don't have any relationship with him. We're friends, and he made me sick. Like, you know, how many different excuses he made, and at the end of the day, you know, he's sort of like he just get called it, because before he was saying that I'm not gonna fight at number 6 in the world because I'm number 3, and he doesn't do nothing for me. So now he goes and he fights a guy who's number 7. So you got a schedule to fight a guy who's in number 7 when I am lower ranked than the guy he's fighting right now, and I'm lower ranked than King, and he faced King that he was just made number 10. So all these type of excuses, he getting called. So I want to fight. He doesn't want to. What can I do?
I was going to ask Hector, because originally the fight between you and him, it seemed like it would be sort of deciding who would possibly be getting close to fighting for the title next. Do you feel like Tyron's avoiding you a little bit?
Of course he is. Of course he is. There's no secret. I've been calling him up in Twitter. I've been calling him up even, on the phone. He just blocked me from his phone. But just to get the fight. And it's funny because before he was like annoying a lot of people in the UFC because he wanted to get a fight so bad. But, now he's just kind of like being silent. And now he started talking again now that he got a fight schedule. So he's got a fight schedule now. He's talking again. But before he was disappeared. I don't understand it. But it is what it is. I just, would love to fight. After my next fight, maybe Carlos Conde or, somebody, I've been trying to, get a hold of, Matt Brown. He's been disappearing, and now he got a fight. But before he got the fight schedule, I was on Twitter all the time, calling him up, and he never answered.
And I'm also just curious because you mentioned, first of all, Carlos Condit and Matt Brown, those would be all great fights. We'll talk about it in 1 second. But Tyron recently said that he's tried to contact you. However, you say that you've contacted him and he's blocked you of his phone. Is that correct?
Tyron has tried to contact me?
Well, yeah, he said recently in an interview that he tried contacting you.
This guy's a delusional, right? This guy's a delusional, and not only the delusional, he's just a liar. Because, my phone is open for every call. And, I never heard from him at all. So I don't know what he's talking about. He's just a liar, But what can I do, mate? What can I do?
Now,
truth one day is gonna come up, and you can hide the truth for so long. Hey, you can hide the truth for a little bit. But then it gets to the point that it's gonna catch up with you, isn't it?
That's true.
Now, Hector, you mentioned the fight with Matt Brown. Brown's fighting Saffiedine, like you mentioned, but he mentioned that after his fight with Saffiedine, he'd like to fight you next. Also, obviously, later on in the month after you fight Berkman, Woodley will be fighting Kevin Gastelum. I'm just wondering, if you had to choose between the winner of Woodley and Gastelum and Brown and Saffiedine, who would you rather fight after you fight with Berkman?
I would like to fight them all, to be honest. I mean, I'm not here to choose fights. I'm the one who's been called them up. All of them. They're not answering me. They just get in fight with somebody else. I mean, they want me to get order or something, but they just talk, but they don't walk. Hey.
Well, I mean, the big news is obviously you're a guy who's looking to get that title shot, win the title. The exciting thing is in mixed martial arts, Australia, or Victoria specifically, the cage is now going to be legal, meaning that the UFC will have a show in the 56,000-seat at Etihad Stadium, probably in November in 2015. I'm just wondering, have you thought about possibly fighting for a title at some point next year in November in Melbourne?
Well, I mean, this is one of the things you guys should be pushing for. I'm here to represent Australia. And I always did in the past, and I'll continue to do it. it's all up to you guys. I mean, you're the ones that have to put the pressure on have me on the card. I mean, yes, I understand that none of the big names at 170 wanted to fight me in the past card, but there's still a lot of fighters, and I wanted to be seen in an Australia card, and I wanted to be fighting in an Australia card. I mean, yeah, it doesn't depend on me in that one. It's depending on you guys, how much pressure you guys putting on the UFC so they can have me back in down under.
Sure.
And Hector, obviously the news just happened yesterday. I'm just wondering, how did you find out about, the legalization of the octagon in Victoria? And, are you excited about this? Because you fought in Victoria a number of times, and unfortunately in a boxing ring. Are you happy that, it's finally being made legal, in one of the biggest sporting states in Australia?
Well, I mean, that's one of the best news I ever heard, lately. And I believe that I put a lot into it because I've been fighting in Australia for a very long time. I was fighting in Australia for too long, I believe. And out of all MMA fighters, I'm the one for the most. So I believe that I need a chance. I need a chance on going to fighting in the Victoria show. There's a chance to prove that I heard a lot of people saying like, there's no many Australian left that they can fight for the title. But just I'm here.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, Mark Hunt, he's kind of, Kiwi, but technically he lives in Sydney, so he just fought for the title, so that's not really an option. And you're a guy who's really coming up in the ranks, and if you win a couple more fights, you may very well be challenging for the title, and given the time frame, it may very well work out. Have you spoken to the UFC at all about possibly, fighting in that November show or fighting for the title or anything like that?
Well, hopefully, they can give me a chance again. To be fighting in Australia. I only fought once over there in the Gold Coast card.
Yep.
But hopefully they give me an opportunity to fight in Australia again. And I believe that it's time. Like if after January 3rd, I can have another 2 more fights and be ready to fighting for the title in November.
Sure.
But let's see what they have been playing. But I think that should be a good option, eh?
Absolutely, Hector. We're going to jump to a couple of fan questions in a second. But before we go, I just wanted to ask, for all the fans listening out there that aren't fighters or aren't a part of the gym, I'm just wondering, is it difficult getting ready for a fight on January 3rd? I mean, it means that you can't really enjoy the holiday season as much, like Christmas or, New Year's Eve. Does that make it difficult at all for you getting ready for a fight, getting ready sort of during a season where, there's a lot of holidays and, people are sort of taking time off and, everybody's celebrating, but you kind of have to focus in and work hard?
To be honest with you, mate, I'm on a mission right now. I don't care about holidays. I don't care about having a good time. I'm on a mission, and that's what it is. I'm here to be the champion. I don't care what it takes to it. Can't wait, and to diet, don't drink, whatever. I just want to get my goal. I want to bring that belt back to Australia.
Well, we'd absolutely love that. That's definitely good news to hear. Now, first fan question, Hector. We've got one. It is from Late Night Steven. His question is, UFC 181 is headlined by Johnny Hendricks and Robbie Lawler. Who do you think will win that fight? What is your prediction?
I believe that Robbie's going to get that one. He's been more consistent with, training and fighting and all that. And Johnny Hendricks has been out for a little bit, for a minute. It's going to be a close fight, but I think that later rounds, are going to have to go with Robbie this one.
Absolutely. And a follow-up question Stephen had was, if Robbie does win the title, obviously you guys come from a similar camp. Would you put aside, obviously the camp for one fight and challenge him to a friendly fight if you did get the title shot against him?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's about you proving your skills and you proving the best. It's not about you're gonna go over there and kill your friend or kill your mate. You're just gonna go over there and prove like who is best. And if you would be the champion, I would give you the chance to him. So I mean, like we all want the same thing. You can't be mad at the person that wants to bet the very same thing that you want to.
Absolutely, Hector. And it's a great attitude to have. We've got one more fan question. It's from bad_K. He wants to know, how many times a day do you train, and what's your average day routine like?
A normal day, I mean, I train twice a day. I train in the morning, and then I train in the afternoon. And at night time, I go for run. Usually, maybe Mondays, we do wrestling for 2 or 3 hours. And then go home, rest a bit. And then at night time, we do grappling techniques. And then I go for run. And then Tuesday, we do cardio, and then sparring. And then at that time, we do weights. And then at that time, I go for run. And you change. But, the main point is we train twice a day. And then at that time, I go and do my cardio myself. I have to be on top of my cardio because before, that was one of the things that I didn't used to do before, run. And, I had issues cutting weight to 185. And now with the diet and low cardio, I'm able to make the 170.
I'm just curious, Hector. You said that you didn't used to run. When did you start running? I would run. When I used to be 185, I would run. Kind of like my late. My just when I was close to make the weight, something like that. Mm. But now I'm kind of like I do run every day, and before I didn't. So So you only really started going for runs when you went to 170. So that was in the UFC, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh wow. That's amazing. Now, we've got another thing that we like to do with all our guests, Hector. It's a bit of fun. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We ask you a few fun questions, and you tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Who would be your dream opponent at the sold-out Etihad Stadium in Melbourne?
GSP.
Wow, that would be amazing. now, Hector, we know you're a great
And let's suppose if you can't fight for the title for some reason, I really would love to, I know that GSP is coming out of retirement, so I really would love to, have a big fight between me and GSP in Australia. That would be a shocker, eh?
I think that would sell at the stadium automatically.
Yeah.
And Hector, just while we're on GSP, obviously you two are amazing grapplers. Tell us what do you think would be the toughest aspect of fighting GSP, and what do you think your advantage over him would be if you guys did fight?
I can take a punch, and my aggression improving every day, so it's gonna be very hard for him to take me down, and stand up is gonna change for me. That's for sure.
Okay. Now, Hector, another question. We know you're a great MMA fighter, but how are you at AFL football and NRL rugby?
Yeah, I am. I have a lot of friends that play football, rugby, and actually, my son is doing football right now.
Oh wow!
He loves it. He loves football. So yeah, I am a big fan.
Who's your team? I'm just
curious. That was one of my comments like a while ago when a few years ago, they were saying like, they're never gonna come. They're never gonna come a good fight out of Australia. They're talking so many crap out there, and I say like, what are you guys talking about? Aussies they have the fighting spirit in it, and they play the toughest sport up there. Football and rugby league and all that, and I believe that, Australians, they're going to be one of the best in the world, and everyone will laugh at me. And now you see it, eh?
Absolutely.
It wasn't a lie.
And, just on that subject, for all the Aussies listening, what AFL team do you go for? Do you have a team that you go for in particular?
Well, I have a few. But, it's kind of like quite funny because they're not winning that much, but I like the Rabbitohs because... I feel sorry for them a little bit. It's so hard for them to win in my Chile. I like the Rabbitohs.
Yeah, it's a bit tough for the Rabbitohs. What about the AFL? What about Australian Football League? Who do you go for there?
And then the Storms.
Oh, the Swans?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sydney Swans. Now, Hector, what's your favorite thing about living in Florida?
Well, my favorite thing is just that I'm able to train every day, and I'm able to don't drive up and down to finding a place to do the boxing or to the the grappling, or I get all that in the same gym. Besides socializing and stuff like that, I don't do none of that at the moment. They call me boring or whatever, but I'm here for a mission.
It's what you got to do if you want to be champion, so we understand.
Now, Hector,
Yeah, you're right.
Now, Hector, we know how great your judo is. Our question to you is, would you ever consider being in a grappling tournament such as Metamoris in the future and showing off some of that grappling against some of the other good grapplers around the world?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I don't get any invitation, but if I get an invitation to compete, I would.
That would be awesome. I think a lot of people would be excited to see that. I was going to ask Hector also,
Yeah.
What was your favorite moment at being at the Sydney 2000 Olympics?
Staying in Australia in general. Australia in general. I mean, I went to many different countries before the Olympics. I went to Germany. I went to Italy, all Europe, Portugal, Spain, France. I mean, I went to so many different countries, competing, and for the Olympic judo team and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I land in Australia, I'm like, wow, this is the place to be. Eh?
Oh,
It's funny because I have a friend of mine. He's fought in Australia. His name is Will Harris. He fought Soa.
Yeah.
And we spent about 45 minutes talking about Australia. He's like, man, I can't believe how beautiful Australia is and stuff like that. And, the people so nice and so low key and stuff. Yeah. He says that he wants to go back with me and stay for like a week or two.
He's certainly welcome in the country. Now, finally, Hector, give us your prediction. How do you plan on beating Berkman January 3rd? Give us your official prediction.
KO.
Wow.
And I don't know how it's gonna go down. But I can see myself KOing the hell out of him, and hopefully I can get a KO of the night, because I never get a KO of the night. I thought that I got it when I fought Nate McQuad.
Yeah.
He didn't, and I thought that I got it when I KO Para Harris. I didn't, and hopefully this time I can get it.
Absolutely. Well, as they say, third time's a charm. So we'll definitely be tuning in January 3rd. If you're in Australia, guys, it's going to be January 4th because of the time difference. Don't forget to follow Hector on Twitter at Hector Lombard, on Instagram, Hector Lombard, and of course on Facebook, Hector Lombard. And don't forget to check out Hector Lombard's new website. It is showweather.com, and he's of course got a clothing line as well there. So don't forget to check that out. Hector, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Good luck on January the 3rd, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And that's the interview portion of the show. Now, guys, last week we mentioned that we'll be taking fan questions, which you can send into info@submissionradio.com. We have a couple that we'll answer for you. We don't have much time left on the show. First one comes from Adam Jerome. He'd like to know our opinion. He goes, guys, the odds have come out for Conor McGregor versus Dennis Siver, 10-1 in Conor's favor. Do you guys agree with the odds, and what do you think of this matchup? Cass, what do you think of these huge odds? Do you think that the matchup warrants a 10-1 favorite for Conor?
Yeah, I'm just going to say yes, I do believe so. We've been looking at some of Dennis Siver's fights and obviously his record, much like Conor McGregor's. If you look at Dennis Siver's style, he's a guy who has gone from, Russian, German, scrappy, tough kickboxer to a guy who really prefers to sort of get on top of his opponent, grind them out, and work top control. He used to be obviously in the lightweight division, bit of a physical specimen. He's a strong guy. And he tends to sort of favor the opponents that he can overwhelm a little bit. I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against Conor McGregor. I think with Conor McGregor's style, his takedown defense revolves mainly on footwork and cutting angles, much like you would to avoid punches. I think Conor McGregor, not to sort of, be too high up on him, not that I'm not, but I think he sort of represents the evolution of the sport, and I think Denisov is a little bit too old school. His last fight was obviously a very hard-fought decision against Charles Rosa, and that was a newcomer to the UFC. You know, he previously won against Manny Gamburian. He lost to Cub Swanson. He's beaten Namfan, Diego Nunes. He lost to Cowboy Cerrone. If you look at his resume, I don't think he's beaten necessarily the top guys, and you could argue the same thing for Conor McGregor, but I do believe Dustin Poirier was a much stiffer test than Denisov, and I think Conor McGregor's going to beat him quite handily. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I think you got some great points there, and I won't go on the technical side of it because I think you covered it quite well yourself. You and me, we're not necessarily betting men. We don't really understand, the odds system that well. But, when it comes to Denisov, I think, you said something interesting, Cass, that, he is kind of more old school, does sort of grind out victory. So I think there is an opportunity there for Dennis to maybe upset the momentum, but I think, Conor should take this pretty handily. I think he should probably, use some of these crazy techniques, take Dennis out. And just interestingly enough, Forrest Griffin, he went on record last week and he said that he thinks that, the way that Conor McGregor's decisively put away his opponents in the UFC is in a way more impressive than Frankie Edgar's performance, because a lot of people have been criticizing, Conor McGregor, saying, Frankie Edgar is underrated. And, Forrest Griffin sort of went to bat for Conor McGregor and brought in the point that, the way that he's disposed of his opponents has been really impressive. And if you look at the way he's finishing them, it's just very, very impressive. So, I mean, at the moment, Conor McGregor, it's not that he hasn't been tested. We haven't seen enough of him, and he's only been in for a few fights. But I think this Denisov fight will be very interesting to see where he stands. I think he should handily beat him, and I think the odds are probably, just about right there.
I think the other thing is, if you look at Denisov's chances to win, he's either going to grind out a top control decision over Conor McGregor or knock him out. Those are the main two ways, that he can really beat him. I definitely don't see him submitting him. But then again, you look at Denisov's finishes. He hasn't finished a guy since November 13th, 2010. So that's 4 years ago, basically. UFC 122 against Andre Winner. I don't think Andre Winner even fights in the UFC anymore, to be honest. I just don't think he necessarily has the tools. I don't think he has the wrestling chops to get Conor McGregor down. I very much doubt it. I think if you look at, he beat a guy like George Sotiropoulos, and a lot of people say, he derailed that hype train. At the time, Sotiropoulos was very close to getting a title shot in the lightweight division. But those are two very different styles. Obviously, George Sotiropoulos was a guy who, great Aussie, but his style revolved more around getting guys to the ground. And if he couldn't do that, sometimes he struggled a little bit. I just really don't think that Denisov is going to take Conor McGregor down. He's the shorter guy. He's got the lesser reach. I think Conor McGregor is going to knock him out, to be perfectly honest. We've seen Melvin Gillard do it. It was a bit of a flash knockout 36 seconds into the first round. And I think we're going to see a similar thing. So, if you're a betting man, I'd probably say bet on Conor McGregor, but if you like to gamble in your life, if you like a bit of excitement, maybe put a cheeky, small bet down on Denisov, because 10-1 odds, if you're a gambling man, some people can't resist stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I guess what will come into play is just Dennis's mentality, being, a European. It doesn't look like he's too mentally phased. He is also a black belt in Taekwondo, much like Conor McGregor. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see the matchup. And I like the way that they're matching Conor up, actually. I know there's a lot of criticism, let's put him together with a wrestler straight away, but I don't see what's wrong with building up Conor. Obviously, he's great for the UFC. He's great for the featherweight division, and he's great for getting a lot of the casual fans into it. So absolutely happy with that here. Now, Cass, Adam also followed up with a question where he would like to know what we think should be the next title fight in the featherweight division. What do you think, Cass? Who do you want to see fight for the featherweight title next?
Well, people may be pissed off, but I'm going to say Conor McGregor. Obviously, Frankie Edgar just fought. Conor's fighting in January, so it's a couple of months away. Aldo just had a hard-fought victory over Chad Mendes, so he's probably not going to be fighting anytime soon. And then with Aldo, you never know how healthy he's going to be. I honestly think if Conor McGregor beats Denisov, he should be getting the next title shot. Now, the reason being, the UFC is a business. It's an entertainment business, and they are lacking on stars. Every few months, there's rumors that GSP might return, Brock Lesnar might return. In fact, every few months. I meant to say every few weeks. And that'd be all great because the UFC needs these kind of stars, Thank God that Anderson Silva's coming back. But in times like these, and with pay-per-view numbers doing pretty low, Fox ratings doing pretty low, they need a star like Conor McGregor. And the thing is, Conor McGregor's whole shtick revolves around him being, essentially undefeated, or at least in the UFC. Once he loses, it's going to take a lot of the aura out of him, much like it did to Brock Lesnar. So I think they need to get him to a title shot against Aldo as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. And if they really want to do that, Stadium Show in Ireland, that's the way to go. And I know recently Matt Brown said, who the fuck has Conor McGregor beaten? What has he done to, get himself a title shot? What has he done that Frankie Edgar hasn't? Well, I will say, though, and with all due respect to Matt Brown, Frankie Edgar already has had his title shot. Cub Swanson did have his title shot. Ricardo Lamas, they all had their title shots. And they're all guys that I would love to see fighting for the title again, and most likely they probably will. But I still think Conor McGregor's yet to have a title shot. So it's not like Frankie Edgar's gone on this amazing streak and he's been denied for years and years and years. You could almost say that, Matt Brown was, but I don't think that's the case. And I'm also a firm believer, if you're meant to be a champion, you're going to become a champion anyway. Like Frankie Edgar, he's looked amazing. And if he does beat his next opponent, then I believe he should get a title shot afterwards. And you might think, it's a little bit hypocritical because what if Conor McGregor loses? I think there's other stakes riding on this. I think if the UFC ever wants to see a million plus pay-per-view again, they need that next big star. They need that Conor McGregor. And the thing is, if let's say Conor McGregor does beat Jose Aldo, well then you can do a Frankie Edgar versus Conor McGregor anyway. So and then at least Frankie Edgar's got a fresher opponent. So I'm definitely of the opinion that despite Frankie Edgar's amazing performance, Conor McGregor should be getting the next title shot. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point there. See, I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Cass, because I think if we put him up in the title shots against Aldo, he'll probably lose, and then he loses a lot of his mystique and maybe loses a bit of his power. I actually wouldn't mind him if they brought him up slowly, if they gave him like a Cub Swanson next or something, because I think he'd actually do quite well against a guy like Cub Swanson. I don't think they should rush him along. But then again, you're right. If you put him up against Aldo and he loses in a valiant effort, it won't necessarily destroy his reputation. If we think back to a guy like Brock Lesnar, who pretty much single-handedly saved the UFC heavyweight division and in a way the UFC by bringing so many casual fans over to the UFC, Conor McGregor might have the very same effect. And in a sport where there aren't that many stars, I absolutely see how that might work. I wouldn't mind seeing Frankie Edgar get the title shot next against Aldo. I think Aldo is an all right champion, but in a lot of ways, just the fact that he doesn't speak English very fluently, and he seems a bit frustrated as of late. I don't know if it's as good for the division, but I mean, Frankie Edgar would be a tough test for Conor McGregor. So then, if he becomes champion and Conor fights him, then in a way, I think his chances of winning the title would be even less. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with I wouldn't mind seeing Frankie Edgar fight Aldo next, Adam, but at the same time, and I'd like to see McGregor being brought up slowly against guys like Cub Swanson, but at the same time, if he gets the title shot, I could understand why it makes a lot of the sense. So
see,
wouldn't be opposed to both.
My only issue with that is if he fights a guy like Cub Swanson and then he loses, he's lost to a guy that isn't even the champion. Yeah. Whereas if you put him up against a guy like Aldo, there's always that excuse. And from a marketing perspective, the UFC can say, he went in, he fought for the title so early in his career, he was inexperienced, he's learned from it so much. Kind of like Brock Lesnar, where if he comes back, there's always that excuse where, he was sick and he faced a murderer's row and things like that. But I think if he goes up against a guy like Cub Swanson and loses, then he loses even more mystique. Much like if he goes on a massive tear, destroys the whole division, Conor McGregor this is, and he looks invincible, and then he loses to Jose Aldo, it's like, where do you go from there? I mean, it's going to be a lot harder to rebuild himself. And it's kind of like with Cub Swanson, he was on, I think a 6-fight win streak, and he fought Aldo so long ago, most people forgot. So I think he really was deserving, if he beat Frankie Edgar, of another shot at Aldo. Whereas with Frankie Edgar, I mean, he versed Jose Aldo 3 fights ago, and yeah, he's looked fantastic, but I think it still is a little bit of a tough sell. And if you're going to have a pay-per-view Jose Aldo against Frankie Edgar, I don't know, you may need another title fight or something to back them up to get people to buy that fight. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people love Frankie Edgar. I just don't know how many casual fans would necessarily buy that pay-per-view. I think you stick Conor McGregor against Jose Aldo, win, lose, or draw, he would still probably get another title shot anyway, and you could definitely chalk that up to lack of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's me playing devil's advocate with you, Casper, and that is, you're going from the point of view, what if he loses against one of these guys? Then obviously he's not as much of a draw, and then he fights against Aldo. If he loses, obviously it's respectable. My question, not really towards you, but towards the UFC and what Dana White knows and thinks about him is, Do they think that this guy could potentially be pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world? And do they trust him enough to put him up against in fights like Cub Swanson? Because obviously, the more fights that he has leading up to the title, the more events he can sell out. Obviously, he's a great name. And if he does get up to the champion and he loses, he'll lose some of that mystique. So does the UFC trust in him enough to give him these fights, thinking, all right, this guy has a good chance of winning, not losing, drawing money for us, then we put him up against Aldo, then he might potentially lose because Aldo's one of the best fighters pound for pound of all time, and no one's been able to beat him, but that's okay because we've been able to make money off him along the way to the title shot, and also because people want to see him fight for the title. They're more interested to see what happens in the title shot and the whole featherweight division in general. So I guess there's a couple of sides to the whole thing there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I don't know how much money they make, obviously, off TV deals and Fox deals and things like that. I just think that the amount of money they would make if they did go to Ireland and sell out a stadium show, I don't know how big the stadium would be or how many they could actually pack in there. But I just think they would make a tremendous amount of money, both in Ireland and obviously pay-per-view, if it was Conor McGregor and Aldo. And every dangerous fight that Conor McGregor takes is basically putting that at risk. So, I mean, all in all, to answer your question, Adam, in my opinion, I think Conor McGregor should get that next title shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on that point that you just said there, Casper, they could probably sell out a stadium show, Conor McGregor versus anyone now. So they might be looking at it from the perspective of, look, if we give him like a person that he's got a rivalry with, he's great at building it up. We can do a whole bunch of stadium shows leading up to Aldo. So, Adam, it could be a whole wide range of things that happens with it, but it'll be interesting to see what he looks like against Seaver. Maybe there'll be a deciding factor for the UFC. Maybe if he walks through Seaver the same way he's walked through a lot of his opponents, maybe that will really lead him to the title shot.
Absolutely. When you mentioned stadium shows, and I'm going to bring that up in the next topic of discussion, obviously the big thing that we have to talk about, I'm not sure how many people know about this in America, but in Australia, this is a really huge deal. Here in Victoria, previously, due to the government, there was a ban on the cage. So basically, you could fight in an MMA fight, you could conduct a show, but you couldn't have the cage, which obviously made a huge problem or no-go zone for Victoria for the UFC. Now, the new government is in place. Labor has won the election. The election happened yesterday. This is fresh news right here. And of course, the UFC have said that they've booked out Etihad Stadium. This is a while ago. I was reading this actually. That they booked it out. I believe the date is November 14th. Don't quote me on that, but I believe November 14th is the date. So now the UFC are planning to come down to Melbourne, and they will be doing a show next year, the year 2015, most likely November, like we spoke to Hector Lombard about previously. So this is huge news, and we just wanted to talk about it, Dennis and myself, about how they could possibly do this, who could be featured on the card, and how they would pack out a stadium of 56,000 people. That would basically be beating the previous record, which was, I want to say 2010 or 11, Jake Shields versus George St. Pierre in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, Dennis, what do you think about this?
Wow, it's absolutely, like you said, they put the stadium aside around that date. And I guess a lot of people listening to our show right now, we have a lot of international listeners that we love, a lot of great listeners in the US and Canada, and they wonder, why is this something that we should care about? And I think it's what you just mentioned. This could be the biggest UFC show of all time. Etihad Stadium previously, the biggest attendance they had, I believe, was said by the WWE. That was in 2002, the global warning pay-per-view they had there, which was stacked out. I mean, that pay-per-view had The Rock, it had Triple H, it had Brock Lesnar. It was supposed to have Hulk Hogan, who pulled out with an injury right before, and it was a long time since the WWE had come down. They sold that place out, and me and Casper were there. It was a magnificent sight, wasn't it, Casper, seeing that stadium sold out in a sort of combat sport event?
Oh, absolutely, and it's even gone through name changes. Back then it was called Colonial Stadium, and then afterwards it was known as the Telstra Dome, and now it's the Etihad Stadium. Sometimes they call it Dockland Stadium as well. Basically, I think if you're gonna let's talk fighters. Let's talk who needs to be there. If you're gonna have 56,000 people go to that stadium, you need a title fight. Basically, for all those that don't know, research says that most of the people, I think up to about 50% of people that do go or have gone to UFC events in the past in Australia have been from Melbourne or at least Victoria. So it only makes sense that they go to the actual, I guess, birthing place of all these fans rather than, buying tickets. And I mean, every time we go, we obviously are based out of Melbourne, so we have to buy plane tickets, accommodation, all that kind of stuff. You might as well just have it in Victoria, and hopefully the theory will be that more people would go there. But if you're going to have a stadium that big, 56,000 people, which is huge, who do you need on the card? Before we go into that, I just want to look at the figures for some of the previous pay-per-views or UFCs that have been in Australia. UFC 110, Sydney, Australia. The year was 2010, and it was at Acer Arena. It was the first ever UFC event, not just pay-per-view event, in Australia. The attendance was 17,431. Pretty big attendance for the arena. Now, Dennis, UFC 127 was the next one. How many people were there?
Yeah, UFC 127, which was headlined by BJ Penn and the now gone. Casper, you're going to have to help me out with this. I'm having a mind blank. Who did BJ Penn fight at the 127 again?
John Fitch. He's now
That's
World
right,
Series
John
of
Fitch.
Fighting.
Yeah, the now gone John Fitch. 18,186 attendance in the same arena the following year.
So it's pretty amazing that you had a card with guys like Mirko Cro Cop, Cain Velasquez, Vanderlei Silva, Nogueira, Michael Bisping, Joe Daddy Stevenson, Ryan Bader, Keith Jardine, Stephan Bonnar, Chris Liddell, CB Dollaway, James Tahuna, all these guys in the first ever UFC event in Australia. I mean, that's huge. People talk about cards getting watered down. I know a lot of these guys are still building themselves up, but Jesus, that's almost like a super card nowadays. And then the next year, you had BJ Penn versus John Fitch, you had Bisping versus Jorge Rivera, Dennis Siver, Chris Liddell, and Brian Ebersol. You had Alexander Gustafsson and James Tahuna on the undercard. That's pretty crazy. You had Mark Hunt on the prelims as well. Nevertheless, I gotta say, that wasn't quite as big of an event as UFC 110, but the buy rate and the attendance was a lot bigger. So it just goes to show, once the UFC came to Australia, everybody got on board and sort of, interest. They obviously took interest in the UFC. The following year, same arena, 14,537. It was about 4,000 people less. The following year after that, you had the UFC in Queensland, Australia, attendance 5,133, which is a third of any previously, of the previous year. So it just goes to show it was a much smaller arena, and it was obviously the first time in Queensland, and the card, to be perfectly honest, wasn't that strong. You had George Soteropoulos and Ross Pearson in the main event. You had two Ultimate Fighter finale fights, and then you had Hector Lombard against Husama Pajares. Funny note, though, Chad Mendes was on the prelim of that card, yet still only 5,133. The following year, which was Hunt vs. Bigfoot, you had an attendance of 11,339, again in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. And then the last fight that we had, which was obviously UFC Fight Night Rockholder Bisping. Dennis, how many people attended that one?
Well, there was 9,904 people there. And if you look back at UFC 127 with the 18,186 attendance, it's almost half of the people that were there for UFC 127, as it was the same arena. So I suppose that's probably the most alarming figure there when it comes to, the attendance of UFC events in Sydney.
Yeah, it's a bit of a scary thought. I mean, this was a pretty decent card. You had Luke Rockhold versus Michael Bisping. That was a huge grudge match. So I think the interest was definitely there. You had Al Iaquinta versus Ross Pearson. That was a really nice underrated fight, but against both guys. Again, both guys are not necessarily huge names. Robert Whittaker versus Clint Hester. I mean, great fight. They were all great fights on the card. But I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of these guys were more sort of local talent. They weren't huge names. So for an event, if you're going to pack out a 56,000 seater arena, you're going to need at least one title fight, possibly two title fights. And that's what we were talking about with Hector Lombard previously, that you would need a guy like Hector Lombard, a strong Aussie guy, to really main event and get that public interest. You'd need billboards everywhere, all over the city. They'd basically have to market the crap out of this event. But it really excites me because Australia was sort of a bit of a forgotten place for a long time. Obviously, we didn't get our first MMA or UFC event for a very long time, and now we could, in theory, be breaking the record for the highest attendance in little old Melbourne, Australia. I mean, I find that insane.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I did speak to Tom Wright in Sydney, and one of the things going around is that there will actually be two title fights, Cass, on the card if they do it, and that's what they're planning on doing if they get this thing down. But yeah, I guess the question is who would they have? Now, the one thing that comes to my mind is if Hector Lombard beats Berkman and he has possibly another fight in between there, you give him a title shot in Melbourne. The other thing that really kind of sort of sits in my mind, and it was just because we just interviewed Hector, is when he said him versus GSP. Now, that could be a really interesting fight. GSP may be making a comeback. You know, if he makes a comeback, you know, why not do it in Australia in a huge stadium against a guy like Hector Lombard? The only problem with that is I don't know if that's something that GSP would be interested in, because obviously you got to fly all the way out here. It's a very tough opponent to make a comeback against. But, you know, if they could make it happen, that would definitely draw a big crowd down there. What do you think, Cass? Who are some other names that you think might be able to draw a crowd that big here in Melbourne?
Well, I think it depends on how you steer Mark Hunt and how many fights he has and how his record goes. If he can work his way back up to Cain Velasquez and have a full camp, you know, obviously if he trains down here in Sydney and then it doesn't have to fly all the way necessarily to, you know, to America, I think him versus Cain Velasquez in a heavyweight title fight, I think that will put a lot of asses in seats. I don't know about John Jones. I don't know if he'd be willing to come down to Australia. I mean, there's nothing to say that he wouldn't. I'm thinking maybe Chris Weidman, maybe have a middleweight title fight. There's a lot of guys in the middleweight division. I mean, there's basically a Shark Tank. But I think the main thing would revolve around basically having local talent, because pay-per-view aside, you need people to fill that 56,000-seater stadium. So I think Mark Hunt would be really good. He's obviously essentially an Aussie. Everyone in Australia considers him an Aussie, even though technically he's a Kiwi. And I think Hector Lombard, depending on how his record goes, he would need to be in a title fight. So if you've got a welterweight title fight and a heavyweight title fight, I think that would definitely put a lot of asses in seats. I'm not sure about the lighter weight divisions. To be honest with you, I think they're a lot more popular in America than they are here in Australia, where a lot of people would say the sport is a bit behind. So you would need some really familiar names and faces if you're going to pack out, you know, 56,000 people.
Yeah, you know, and let's just talk about it from probably a more realistic perspective, and that is, you know, probably Mark Hunt and Lombard won't have the title shots, let's just say. I'd have to say that they would have to have like a Chris Weidman defend his title or something of the likes, or a heavyweight title defense there. And also, I'm thinking Ronda Rousey is a good name for another title fight on there as well. So you have, obviously, Ronda would main event, but you have a Chris Weidman main event. Now, what would you do with these other names, like you mentioned, Mark Hunt, Hector Lombard? What I would do is, if Overeem gets through Struve in December, I'd have Mark Hunt versus Alistair Overeem. Possibly that's a really fun fight, and, you know, that's something that fans would be interested in. Mark Hunt will probably win that fight, I think, with a KO. I think that's something that Overeem might be interested in. He likes to travel to Australia. Another fight that I'd be interested in seeing is the infamous Lombard versus Woodley fight. If Woodley wins, although both of them are fighting in January, it's probably too long for them to wait to fight in November. That's probably that. Now, Jake Matthews would have to be a big part of the prelims, I think, or, you know, kicking the card off. It will be interesting to see who they could give that kid. And it can't be someone who's too tough as well. You can't just jump straight to, you know, a big name as well. So that's something interesting. Carl Noak, if he could, you know, he's obviously recovered. If they could find a good opponent for him, that would be good. And Anthony Perosh versus Little Nog, that could be a really good fight to start the night off, possibly kick off the main card, main event, a prelim as well. So those are some fun fights that might draw the Australian crowds.
Yeah, it is really interesting because obviously now that they're going to come down to Melbourne, and you know what, they will have another event in Australia anyway. They're probably going to do Sydney or Queensland. But obviously, if you're going to have that 56,000-seater stadium, every Aussie is going to want to get on that card. I will say this though, you need huge names as well. You need big names that people are going to be like, oh, I don't know necessarily much about MMA or the UFC, but I've heard of that guy and I want to go see him. So I'm very curious as to how they allocate the spots. Obviously, on any card, you can only have a certain amount of fights. So I'm wondering whether they're going to, you know, put a lot of the Aussies on the prelims, or if you're going to see, you know, a bit of a sort of, how do I explain it? If you see sort of like a big name followed by an Aussie fighter, followed by another big name, followed by another Aussie fighter. I guess it's really tough to say given that essentially the event would be a year away from this date. But I'd be very curious to see how they slot all the Aussies in there, because obviously every single Australian fighter in the UFC right now would probably be calling Dana White or Tom Wright asking for their shots on that card.
Yeah, you know, if I was in the UFC and in the marketing department there, what I would do is I'd put most of the Aussie fighters on the prelims because it will draw the crowd down to watch them. And they're not necessarily some of the names that people want to see in the main card, so they'd serve their purpose in drawing the media here in Australia. but at the same time, they wouldn't take away from the main card. I was going to say there's another name in my mind that I think would do really well in this card, and we don't know what's going to be happening in November with this man, but I'm thinking Anderson Silva. What's he going to be doing around November? I know he is loved here by the Australians. Who knows what's going to happen with him versus Nick Diaz? Let's say he wins decisively. Who knows what kind of layoff he wants? He loves the big shows. What do you think about Anderson Silva being on a card down here in Melbourne, Cass?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he seems like the type of guy who would be able to fight anywhere. I don't know whether Anderson Silva has ever even been to Australia, but I imagine he'd love coming down here. Obviously, like you said, has a ton of fans, and of course, I'm sure he'd be doing signing in the MMA fight store, or at least somewhere. I just think that it really depends on how he goes against Nick Diaz and if he has a fight in between and if he'd be ready by November. And the thing is, you really never know what they're going to do with Anderson Silva. If he beats Nick Diaz, how many fights before he goes for another middleweight title shot? You know, I think if you do say another fight between him and Chris Weidman, or imagine a rematch, let's say Vitor Belfort beats Chris Weidman. Let's say you do Vitor Belfort against Anderson Silva, the rematch. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do against Anderson Silva. Even if it was, for example, against a light heavyweight, which I don't know what kind of desire Anderson has to get back to the light heavyweight division, but even against a light heavyweight, if you have Anderson Silva on a card and he's not even main eventing, that would just show you how huge the card would be.
Absolutely agree with you there, Cass. Now, we are running out of time, but before we cut this short, just a couple of fights that I think probably wouldn't work, a couple of title fights that I think wouldn't draw a crowd. And I mean, one of the things is, you know, Luke Rockhold, he's a very well-known fighter in the States. One of the things that we found here in Australia it wasn't really a very well-known name in Sydney. Not that many people knew him in terms of casual fans. And there's a few champions out there that I think probably wouldn't sell tickets just as well. I think a fight with Demetrius Johnson, barring it would be a huge matchup, possibly him and Benavidez. Even that, I don't think would really capture the interest of the Aussie casual fans or enough people to catch the 56,000 crowd. It wouldn't be enough of a draw. Another fight that I think is, you know, if TJ Dillashaw defends his title, he'd really have to do, maybe even if he defends it against Dominic Cruz, that would really have to be that co-main event fight. It wouldn't be a fight that draws the fans down. So I think the UFC needs to be really, really careful about who they put down, because one of the things here in Australia when it comes to drawing a crowd is the casual fans, they really don't have as much knowledge as the American fans, and there is a bit of a knowledge here in Australia where some of the lighter weights just aren't as popular, like you mentioned, Cass. So they will have to be very careful with that going into this card.
Yeah, I agree. I think essentially you'd have to have welterweight division up if you're going to do a title fight, and if it's going to be a lightweight title fight, I mean, we'll see how Jake Matthews does. You never know. If he can get 2 big fights under his belt, he might be fighting for a title soon. Although that'd be tough to imagine just because the lightweight division is so packed. I think that's pretty much it from us for another week. Guys, we'll be back next week with another show, same time, same place, more guests. Can't wait. As always, follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS, Facebook, Submission Radio AUS, and of course, subscribe to the channel and like the video if you've enjoyed it. Tons of stuff on the channel as well. Technique of the week every Wednesday, dropping a brand new technique. Dennis, any final messages for the fans?
Yeah, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, pop into the comment section below and tell us what fight do you think would suit one of the biggest UFC cards of all time here in Melbourne. What do you think would sell the 56,000 stadium, Etihad Stadium out, and what would you want to see if you live in here in Australia, or even if you're in America? What do you think would sell the seats and put butts in seats? Let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to see what you think.
We're excited, guys. We can't wait to hear from you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.